Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening. I will call the meeting to order. Ask anybody recording, please take it on. I don't believe we're going to have a full board this evening due to various circumstances. I know Ken's not going to be here, and Mike Baptiste, I'm not sure about Mark.
Mark said he was going to be late. He's stuck in traffic.
I will table the meeting minutes for February 25th. Anyone needs a copy of the agenda if there's some on the table there. Next item is an approval not required plan for Jeffrey Monist for 8 Scotts Path. I think the plans.
Good evening, Sam Imelli with JC Engineering. This project involves 2 abutting lots located on Squaws Path, where we are essentially going to look to reconfigure the lot line between the 2 lots. This will leave each lot with adequate frontage as well as lot area, and we will maintain the setbacks to the structures as well as the existing septic systems.
Was that the purpose, to accommodate the septic system?
No, just to divide land.
So the initial lot was shaped
Yeah, represented in that dashed line that
in
you
a
see on the
U-shape?
plan. Yep.
Why isn't the other line of Squaws Path shown? That is the access road or the access,
Yes, yep.
how wide, I mean, why is it not the width shown, the other line?
It's an undefined private way. There was no reference to the width on any of the recorded plans.
But that is the access to,
That is the access, correct, yep.
so they each have fronted.
Yeah, I'll take a look if you want.
Follow your own strength.
Hmm?
What's the purpose?
The ditch in the back.
All they did basically is just reverse it.
Yeah. Well, it used to be one lot.
So then this one came down,
Yeah.
so they're just chopping it.
No, as I'm reading it, it was one lot. This way and one lot. See this? Former lot line. This stays. And it appears that this lot was shaped.
So now this house, rather than being on this,
Right, right.
is on this.
Yeah. Charlie, in terms of the requirements of the presenting the plan for the A&R purpose, we do not need to see the other side of Squirrel's Path?
No. No, gentleman is correct when he says it's undefined. Yeah. This is only taking existing lots and reconfiguring the internal lot line between the two, so it doesn't affect the street line at all.
Make a motion to endorse.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
George, did you happen to just initial those two for the record? Yeah, okay, okay, good.
We need to do approval forms. There's members of the planning board there. Along here. Next item of business is the public hearing. Special permit site plan review for Wareham Retail Management, 1 South Toby Road.
Evening, members of the board. My name is Lindsey Wilson. I'm counsel for the applicant, Allrig USA. I will take your time. We have some boards and visuals as well that we can walk you guys through. This is the out parcel at the Walmart development on 1 Seth Toby Road and Cranberry Highway. This is our kickoff hearing here for site plan special permit. I'll give you a little bit of background context, introduce our team, and then turn it over to my engineer colleague here. This development has actually been permitted twice before due to both economic reasons and decisions on the part of the prior owner to go in a different direction. Those permits have lapsed. We're coming back fresh, asking for site plan approval for a 3-building development parcel with an initial kickoff building that we're coming before you tonight in particular, and then the following two buildings will be somewhat tenant-driven, and we'll be back before you. Our team consists of our principal from Allrig USA, Brandon Schramm is here. He's in from Detroit for our hearing. Derek Redgate from High Point Engineering. We also have our traffic engineer, Sean Kelly from Vaness, and Michael Radner, our landscape engineer, is here as well. So we brought the team, and hopefully can answer your questions. We also started this process about 3 months ago now, I'd say. We had come in and met with Ken Buckland and Charlie as well, and some other people from the town to get some preliminary input on what we were thinking. At that point in time, there was some conceptual drawings that included drive-through and some other things. We since came back with the feedback that we got from you all and made some changes, reduced the square footage a little bit, and responded to a couple of particular concerns. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Derek to kind of walk through the application itself, and then we can answer your questions that you might have.
Great. Good evening. Derek Redgate from High Point Engineering. I'm the civil engineer on the project. I thought as far as process here, I would briefly go over, just briefly describe the site and also let Vaness Associates give a brief presentation on the traffic as well as Radner Design on the landscaping, and then perhaps open it up to questions after that, if that makes sense. Great. So the site, we have a site plan over there, a colored rendering. It's at the corner of Route 28 and Seth Toby Road is there on the bottom to get you oriented. It is a three building, one-story development. If you look, I'm going to stand up so I can point to things.
Yeah. If I point this your way, I bet you you'll pick it up.
Do you need me to speak into the microphone, or can I?
You may have to talk.
I can talk loud, don't?
You can try it if you can hear
Okay,
it.
great. So there's the site here. Last Wednesday, we were in front of the Concom for a determination of whether we need a wetlands permit. We have a negative determination from them. These yellow lines show the, this last yellow line is the 100-foot buffer, and we have, all of our work is outside of that. Here, we've shown the zoning line between commercial strip and industrial. So all of our project is completely within the commercial strip. We have about, in total, 16,200 square feet of development, 123 parking spaces. The general circulation of the site is going to be to enter at the main Walmart entrance and proceed into the development at this entrance here. We're going to provide a full 24-foot circulation drive around the site. There's multiple ways you can do that, but also a new entrance exit on the access road that goes to the back of the Walmart. So 3 new buildings, all new utilities, new sewer, new water, new stormwater management system. When the Walmart was constructed, 2010, 11, 12, that range, there was accommodations made to tie in to sewer. So we have a pre-constructed sewer connection already in Seth Toby, and it comes to a sewer manhole that's not being used for anything right now, but that's already located inside of the site, and then an 8-inch sewer line that's capped right at the corner of our site. So we're going to try to utilize that as best we can. So the sewer will collect in a sewer main and connect to this stubbed utility that was previously constructed. We've looked at some of the pedestrian routes. There's existing sidewalk along Seth Toby. We're going to provide a new concrete walkway into the site from the corner, so you could access it across the intersection and into the site. Also, if you were coming from this direction, we're going to create a new walkway path that will connect to the walkways in front of the building, so you'll have a clear pedestrian access to the entire site and then be able to leave. Loading and dumpsters. We've located dumpsters for each building in 3 separate locations. We're going to use the dumpster area as also our loading requirements for these 2 buildings. And we have another loading area located over here. Architecture-wise, I brought the rendering with us. This is the rendering of the middle building, the Aspen Dental. As Lindsley mentioned, we are not sure of the tenants yet for the other 2 buildings, but the architecture will be very similar to this and meet Wareham's requirements for that. And stormwater management. So the 3 new buildings, we're proposing a new underground stormwater area. This will be actually underneath some of the parking. And this will provide water quality treatment and infiltrate mainly in this area underneath. We also have 2 new bioretention areas located here and here, as well as a new stormwater detention areas in some of the open space that we have in the corner of the site. These are all going to be interconnected hydraulically to provide 100% infiltration for the 100-year storm. That's how we've designed this. We have no drainage outlets proposed. We handle it all on site. And with that, I'll hand it to, who wants to go next? Sean and then Mike?
Just one other comment for at least Charlie's purposes. We had come in and had discussed potentially doing a subdivision of the site, but because of some complexities requiring the landscape buffer from the property lines, we have worked it out so that we're not going to be doing that.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, my name is Sean Kelly, a traffic engineer with Manask Associates. On behalf of the project team, I'd like to thank you again for having us before you tonight. What I'd like to do tonight, if it pleases the board, is just take a few minutes to walk you through our traffic study, how it was conducted, what our findings were, what our recommendations are. Then I'd be happy to answer any questions that members of the board or audience might have. So first off, I think we're all probably fairly familiar with the project site, but just to orient ourselves, again, the site is the out parcels of the existing Walmart store, located at the intersection of Cranberry Highway, which is Route 28, with Toby Road and Tow Road, signalized intersection. This intersection, as I'll get into a little later, was upgraded fairly recently as part of the Walmart project, which included the out parcel we're here for tonight. To the south, 28 provides access to 195, and then also more local access is provided along Toby Road, which connects down into Main Street at a 3-way stop location. The traffic study that we did was done in accordance with all state and industry guidelines. The first stage is we went out, we collected existing traffic and safety data to get a handle on the traffic and safety conditions as they are today. We went out and did traffic counts at the 5 locations that accommodate the majority of the site-related traffic. Along 28, we looked at the traffic signal at the Wareham Crossing Shopping Center, We looked at Toby Road and Tow Road, as the signal is designated with this symbol. We looked at the 2 access drives that serve the site, a full access onto Toby Road, and then also a full access limited egress driveway onto Route 28 where you can make all movements in, but exiting movements are restricted to right turns only. And then we also looked at the local intersection of Main Street with Toby Road. Went out and did counts. Today, Cranberry Highway carries about 16,000 cars on a typical day, 1,400 or so during the peak hours. When I talk about the peak hours, I'm speaking of the weekday evening commuter peak, and then your Saturday midday peak when the retail volumes are highest. Toby Road does about 6,000 cars per day, about 500 during the peak hours. That's kind of a flavor of the traffic conditions as they are today. With regard to safety, we looked at the study area locations. Most of the locations had crash rates that were well below the state's official crash rate. I would point out that the intersection of Wareham Crossing with Route 28 actually had a higher than average crash rate, and it was designated as a highway safety improvement program location, which means it's a location that warrants further study to look at safety issues that are involved there. The Wareham Marketplace project, which is right next door where Aldi is, has actually taken on that effort. There's a meeting next week, so they'll be working collaboratively with the town and the state to look at measures to improve that location. But that was the only HSIP location in the area. Next stage in our studies, we take the volumes we collected and we basically bump them up to account for growth in traffic over the next several years. We look at general background growth, we look at traffic associated with other projects. The big generator in the area, as you can imagine, is the Wareham Marketplace project. The Aldi and the AutoZone are operational, but there's still quite a bit of retail space that's vacant there. There's also a Wendy's that's proposed and has actually been approved that hasn't been constructed. So we've taken the traffic associated with all of the development that's yet to come online and we've incorporated that in as well. So that's also in our analysis. For the project itself, we, in accordance with industry guidelines, utilize data that's published by what's known as the Institute of Transportation Engineers, or the ITE. And the ITE gives you trip generation rates for a variety of land use codes. For this specific project, it's land use code 820, which is shopping center for the retail space, and land use code 710, which is 720 rather, which is medical office for the dental space. And when you look at it, what it tells you is that that the shopping center does about 50 to 60 trips per hour. This is total trips, so about a car in and a car out every other minute. The medical office, the dental space is far lower, 13 to 11 total trips an hour. It's about 5 or 6 in and out every hour. Not all the retail trips are new. Whenever you have retail space that's proposed in an area that's as densely populated with commercial space as this area is, a lot of those trips are what we call pass-by, where it's a new trip into the site, but it's not a new trip on 28, they're already out there. The industry data says it's about 35%, can range as high as 50. We went more conservatively with 25%. And when you net all this out, what it tells you is that the project will generate about 49 to 54 new trips an hour during the busy commuter peak and Saturday midday peak. So you're talking about basically one entering car every other minute and one exiting car every other minute. Most of it heads 28 south towards the interchange, with smaller percentages going down Toby Road and on the Main Street. One thing I would point out is that when we did, and I should probably disclose, our firm was responsible. We did the permitting for the Walmart work 5 or so years ago. We were also involved with the permitting for the Wareham Marketplace next door, and then this project. When Walmart went through the permitting effort, both at the state and local level, the planning board and zoning board and the town plan at the time made it adamant they wanted to have the out parcel traffic included in that assessment. So when we filed with MEPA, when we filed with Mass DOT, when we filed locally with your boards, the traffic associated with these out parcels has always been in the equation. And quite frankly, we've carried it through to other projects that have come online, whether it was the Roseburg project or Wareham Marketplace. So we've always had a placeholder in place for the traffic that this particular site would generate. And we've been carrying the traffic that was reviewed as part of the MEPA process, which was a slightly larger project. We're at 16,300 square feet. The project that was reviewed at the state level before was 18,500, about 12% more square footage. But it was purely retail, so it actually had higher trip generation characteristics. So I won't go through all these numbers, but the bottom line, I think, is that when you look at what was previously approved at the state level, what's currently proposed with the mixed use with the office, medical office, and retail, what it tells you is that, on a peak hour basis, the current project does about 8 to 22 fewer trips than the project that was previously reviewed and approved. And then on a daily basis, anywhere from about 109 to 310 less trips. So we've always accounted for this development, even as recently as the recent permitting for the Wendy's say. But we've always included a little bit more traffic than it's actually going to generate, because now that the actual land uses have been figured out, it's a lower generating traffic. In terms of mitigation, quite frankly, the mitigation for this project was really built when the Walmart moved forward. We encapsulated the traffic associated with the old parcel, we put it into play. And just to walk through what kind of the history was, the intersection of Toby Road with Route 28, 5 years ago, had issues in terms of geometric deficiencies, had issues in terms of safety, had issues in terms of the alignment between Toby Road and Tow Road. And Walmart, when they came in to mitigate both their store as well as the old parcel development, proposed some significant upgrades to that intersection. They added 2 new lanes on 28 in the southbound direction, a second through lane that carries you down to Wareham Crossing, and an exclusive right turn lane that brings you onto Toby Road. They constructed sidewalk along all their frontage. They worked with the Beatons, who at the time owned the cranberry harvesting operation on the opposite corner, and they worked collaboratively to basically share land to correct some deficiencies and actually shift Toby Road over to get it more in line with Tow Road. There was a pretty significant offset before. Also improved the pedestrian crossings, new islands, new handicap accessibility, crosswalks, you name it. So when this project was permitted, and again it included the O parcels, the mitigation was already in place. So what was needed to accommodate both of these uses has been in place for a couple of years out there. And as we've moved forward and done, more developments come online, including Wareham Marketplace, we've always been sensitive to look at that intersection. And it still works acceptable levels of service. So really our recommendations, quite frankly, are mostly site-oriented, ensuring that the circulation aisles are adequate, 24 feet in width, that you accommodate emergency vehicles arriving at the site, that signage and snow plowing and things of that nature don't be done in a way to impede sight lines internal to create safety concerns. And then, lastly, as part of the Walmart and out parcel development as a whole, the applicant had made a commitment to DOT and to MEPA that on an annual basis for 5 years they would go out and monitor this site and look at the traffic conditions and look at the volumes it generates and ensure that the projections match what's actually happening in the field. And our recommendation would be that when the next monitoring report comes online, that they explicitly look at the O parcels as well as the Walmart, just so they can do that check on both properties. And that's really all I have for tonight. Again, this project, we went through this effort about 4 or 5 years ago, and that the improvements that are in place were designed to really accommodate an even slightly larger development than we're here before you tonight.
Just one other point on that. Although you were involved in the traffic study for the Walmart development itself, your firm is not engaged in the annual updates, correct?
We have not, no.
Right. So I know that there was some concern about the level of detail of the response that was given on the last report. We certainly are happy to, try to provide additional info, but that didn't come from your shop at least.
No, it didn't.
Right.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Michael Radner with Radner Design Associates. I'm the landscape architect on the project. And I'll take you for a quick walk through not through the woods, but through the landscaping. And so I brought a plan here tonight that's hopefully is legible. I printed it bigger than the other one, so there's no green. So just the basic approach to this is we have highway plantings along the east, south, and east of the site, and we have internal plantings that provide shade and relief and greenery within the site. We have some plantings that are adorning the stormwater areas. And then we have some plantings that are sort of on the entry area and the backs of the building. So I'll just start sort of on the periphery of the site with the sort of the Cranberry Highway, Toby Road edge there. As you can see, it's an informal approach to the planting. We didn't want to do straight rows of trees. We want to do something that's more, I think, in keeping with the town of Wareham. An informal planting. There's a variety of trees that happen along that edge. They're all native trees. And it's sort of, you know, it's not a monoculture. It's not all oaks or maples. There's a couple of species mixed in there. I don't know if there's any plant people on the board. We can get into as much detail as you like on that. That's the general approach. With underplantings along these beds here that are, and basically the approach here is it's a vehicular view of the plantings. It's a highway type of planting, so when we do that, we tend to do larger shrubs. If you're moving 20 or 30 miles an hour, hopefully not too much faster than that. But it sort of gives you, they're broad brush, large groups of things like junipers and nine bark and sumac and spirea and things like that. So these are all sort of tried and true plantings that we use a lot in retail settings like this and commercial settings. Sort of bulletproof plantings that we'll get. So we'll get a large, nice buffer along that edge. And I think it's particularly to note along this corner right here where we have some evergreen plantings and trees along there. I think it's a fairly robust edge treatment. At the same time, we have trees that grow up and have a tall canopy and are high branched, and then shrubs that are sort of down here so that you can still see into the site. And for retailers, that's important to be able to see the signage of the site and so forth. On the entry to the site, you can see, so here's the entry to the Walmart here. There are a couple of trees along here. We're going to enhance that with some flowering trees along this edge. Coming around and into the site, as I mentioned, the internal plantings that happen on the internal islands here, fairly typical shade tree and underplanting on those islands as well. We have some, there's a large sort of green space here where there's an underground drainage galleys, would you call them? There?
Yep, that's
okay.
accurate.
Right, so there's not a lot that can be planted on top of there, but in these sort of rain gardens in these areas here, we have sort of native plantings, large shrub native plantings along the edges to sort of enhance that, so it's not just a green swale. It has some character to it and along here as well. And on this edge, it's sort of the back, these are sort of back of house functions on the buildings. So you have delivery and dumpster that takes place here. There's a delivery space here. So we're sort of enhancing the backs of those buildings, again, with sort of large shrub plantings on those to break up the walls in back there. Just make sure I hit all of my planting notes here. We meet the requirements of the bylaw in terms of the number of trees and the plantings in terms of number of parking spaces, and the requirement for linear frontage along the highway is trees of 1 every 40 feet. And as I mentioned before, sort of informal arrangement of that. So they're not exactly 1 every 40 feet, but if you add up the whole distance and you divide by 40, you get the correct number of trees. So we meet your requirement. I'm going to flip this around and just talk about site lighting for a moment. And the approach on lighting is fairly similar to what you have next door in the Walmart. Walmart, I haven't measured those poles. I think that they're in the 35 to 40 foot range. We're proposing a 30-foot high light standard with a luminaire on top that has down lighting. It's dark sky compliant, which I'm sure you're familiar with. It's LED lighting so that there's, these fixtures go for 10 years without having to change out any lighting. They're very high, durable and long lasting. And as you can see, I outlined in red, that's the 1 foot candle line. So, basically it shows that we're keeping all the lighting within the site. And then the light locations are distributed, the light poles are distributed around the site, basically directing light into the site, towards the storefronts where you want them, and in the parking lots where you want them. I think the lighting levels are appropriate for a retail facility of this type. We want to go for a minimum level of safety, but not too bright. We don't want Fenway Park. We want something that's appropriate for the site, and we think that this achieves that. There are some building-mounted lights that we're showing as part of this calculation. Along the dentist store here, they're coordinated with the building elevations. In other words, the architect located the lights on those plans, and these are shown as the downlights here. And then we made some assumptions on lights on these other buildings here. So they're wall-mounted lights at about 15 feet and all shining down. So that concludes that part.
Question, please. Excuse me, I probably did not hear correctly. Did you say 30 feet? Oh,
30 feet.
30 feet.
Yes.
30 feet.
Why does it have to be so tall?
Why?
So the approach on the lighting is, as you go taller, you can spread them apart a little further, and you get an even distribution of light. If you go shorter on the height, you have to add more poles, and you get more sort of hot spots under those. So it's a way to keep the lighting sort of even on the ground. Like I said, that the Walmart fixtures are taller. We went a little bit shorter because we have a little more finely textured development here, so that we're trying to hit, the corners and things like that. So, I mean, if, I would, go ahead.
Sorry. Did that,
I think we're on the same track with the.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at a two-story object there. I don't know, I wasn't here for Walmart, so I don't know why it makes sense to me, light distribution-wise. Is there downlighting on the street side of the building, or is it black on there? Yeah. The downlighting on the building you described in your last statement.
Right.
Facing the Toby Road and Cranberry Highway?
There's small cylinder lights here, so they're, kind of like small things, and they actually don't cast a lot of light. That's not what provides the majority of the site lighting. It's the pole, the luminaires mounted on the poles.
And will there be signage on the street side of the buildings?
Yes, you want to,
Because I want to know, my question is that lighting been taken into account? And to be quite honest, I don't know
Yes.
when this question gets answered, but
Yeah.
I'm not particularly thrilled with the amount of light that the new liquor store is giving off on Toby Road. And I think what one of my concerns has been with the volume of signage and the lighted signage, that if we don't pay attention to this now, we create this distraction that gravitates everybody's energy to looking at these structures and not paying attention to the road.
right.
So from my perspective, safety is always first. So I want to see if this early stage of the project, you're considering the lighting from any lit signs that are going to be associated with these buildings. Because if this is a dental office of one of these large franchises, they have this habit of, I don't know what the intention is, they're expecting a little bit late, but is this a franchise that's going to put lights on all sides and signage on all sides?
You want to?
Yeah, we can go through the,
I think it's instructive to look at this graphic right here where we have, so this elevation here is the front of Aspen, which is this edge right here, facing Cranberry Highway. So, and they have 1, 2, 3, 4 lights there. Is there some, I don't know if their sign is internally lit or not.
I don't think that it is, actually.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the Colleen Place Plymouth one, that I don't think it is.
Yeah, so these are lights here that are on the masonry columns. So I'm playing architect here, so they're gonna shine a little bit up and a little bit down, but it's not a wholesale, Klieg light facing the lighting the face of the building like that at all.
That's the street face
This is the street face.
with all that window.
Right.
And that sign says, what, Aspen Dental?
This says Aspen.
Correct.
Is that lit?
I don't believe so, but we can check
We'll find
for
out.
you.
on that, yep.
Okay, because it just so I'm expressing my concern properly, I'm looking at a very busy intersection now with a whole lot of interior lighting coming in to drivers that are nearby, down lighting on the building, and then neon sites that are there. So, you know, this, part of as we, and this is just this planning now, right? So if we look at our existing Cranberry Highway on East Wareham, there's a whole lot of distractions while you're trying to move thousands of cars down that roadway right now. So I want to just understand what the signage looks like and the lighting on the building. And does it need to be so bright on the street side where the approach is actually from the interior of the property?
I would point out that on this side, which is the side you're concerned about, the poles are, I'm just going to point at the poles as we go down the street here. Okay, so they're facing in, and they basically are lighting this parking lot here. As the light gets across, you know, the farther you get away from a light, the softer it is or the dimmer it is. By the time you get to the sidewalk along here, we're less than a foot candle along these edges. So that, in combination with any light that might come out of the storefront through the glass, and we don't know what these are going to be yet, obviously. But for this one, the combination of that light and any light that comes out of that storefront is going to be the sort of a minimal.
Yeah.
And all of the street lights are hooded, downlit by
Yeah.
design.
Yeah, I just asked, this is me, just Mark speaking right now.
Mhm.
You guys kind of put yourself in our seats and look beyond your project and us as, you know, community, residential folks and users of this on a regular basis, is that this goes up, a Wendy's goes up across the street, a new mobile station goes up, and all of a sudden, this looks like the center of Vegas here with a bunch of neon lights.
Right.
So when we ask questions, some of it is pertaining to the exact project that you're talking about, and then others is, what's it look like in combination
relates,
with
right.
something that nobody
Sure.
has even envisioned
Sure.
yet out there. So I'm trying to think of consistency in what this whole intersection looks like.
So,
I was just gonna say that this, I mean, it's certainly something we can pass on to the architect.
Yeah,
And part of the problems that you're suggesting is probably, you know, each retail has different sign vendors and different architects, so you start to get a, you know, different feel for each one. I think the fact that we're one, it's gonna be the same architect for all three buildings, that, you know, a sensitive signing program, we can direct them to do that. And there's some standards for other municipalities that we've worked in that, you know, control the height of the sign and the lighting. So I think that's certainly a recommendation we can pass on as we move forward to the final design.
I'd also like to just for comparison's sake and context, if we look at the numbers that are happening on the ground, basically you're getting between 1 and 2.5 foot candles. Half a foot candle is the light on a clear night by a full moon, okay? So, and the light in a gas station somewhere, a mobile station or a Cumberland Farms, you're gonna have between 15 and 20. So we're like way down on the lower side of,
yeah, I don't want you to misunderstand
yeah.
it.
No,
I think these are wonderful projects, and we appreciate you proposing these to the town, and we want to see everything be a success. But for me, what's happening here on this corner, because I live in this section of town, is that these are interior complexes, in which the concentration should be from the interior selling to the consumer. You know, do we need to advertise on the backside of these buildings to try to draw people in? I think that Google's probably telling them how to do it, we don't need that neon sign. And it's not the intensity of the light, because it can appreciate foot candles. It is the magnetic draw and this is distracted driving, and I'm kind of just gravitating to what I do for a living, right? So it's the distracted driving of, I'm looking at a sign right now at a very intense intersection, and it's only gonna get more intense. And do we want the driver looking in this direction, and is it absolutely necessary? If you provide good commercial reasons why you need 40 more feet of sign, because it generates X amount of dollars, then I can buy in and listen to that, but it's just, you need to look at this project and then beyond. But completely open and, working within the parameters of what's allowed.
Yeah, I'm Brandon Schramm with the developer, Already USA. A couple things. So we're developing the whole project, same architect. We do a lot of developments here across the country, and we don't want to come in and just put some, I'm not from here, I don't want to throw something in the middle of your neighborhood and your town and then just leave, especially, lighting it up like that. We work with a lot of these national retailers that their storefront is up on the road like that, so that, they want their stores facing that way. Aspen Dental is not backlit, the lights are around it. We can control the lighting for the entire project, and we don't want to build something that, more importantly, you guys aren't going to like. So I understand what you're saying entirely, and, we'll do everything we can to make the lighting streamlined and not bright and ugly, because we don't want to do that for you guys, for the developers, or for Walmart behind us. They have their own restrictions, so I totally understand what you're saying, and we're going to make sure that we take that into consideration.
Yeah, because the formula's backwards is that, we need, what we approve here would be difficult to push back on you to have it changed. And we don't have the money to change the road structure to accommodate, the look or design of a building. So we want to make sure that we're
Totally
being good
understand.
stewards of the towns.
And we want to be good, partners to you as well, so we totally understand that.
That, I guess the counterpoint that we have to be careful as well is safety, which, there is a required amount of lighting, and then obviously these people are retailers and they're in business to have their stores be known. So, we don't want to be disingenuous either, but within the bounds of what we're able to do, we certainly can accommodate your concerns.
Mark, I hear your concern, but as I read the elevation, I don't see the problem there. Can you hear me? Sorry. The light is on. So in looking at the elevation, Mark, I understand your concern. It's not the problem. The problem for me is that the building is 18 feet tall, surrounded by 30-foot light posts. I would urge you to reconsider that. There must be other ways to do it without having that dichotomy of scale. It's like looking at the windmills when you're driving down, what is your tallest tree, by the way? The tallest
sorry.
tree that you're planting?
Initially, obviously they
Well,
are
what
going
will
to be maturing.
what will they grow to?
Well, the trees will grow 40, 50 feet in ideal conditions.
An ideal initially?
Sure.
Initially?
Initially, they're going to go in at, they're 2.5 inch to 3 inch caliper, 12-foot minimum height.
10, 12 feet.
And they're going to be dwarfed
So,
by the
but-
light, yeah. No,
Typically, a 3 inch caliper tree will go in at 14 to 16 feet high. So I hear you,
Great
and
presentation.
I think we're gonna respond to
A
it.
great
Yeah.
presentation, the building is
Yeah.
fine, huh? But you blew it on the lights.
Well, so just, we do want to be responsive. Also, there's a stepping down effect, so we have to, while we've drawn our site as, it looks almost like a standalone, this connects right into the Walmart parking lot as well, and they're at 35 feet. So our thought was to come in at a lower scale and graduate it down as you get to the out parcels. Obviously, we can look at it further,
would be greatly-
but if we have the Walmart lights up here and we came in so much different, it would, that would pose other issues probably as well.
I, for one, would thank you for the improvement.
Point taken.
Do you also have a plan where you reduce the lighting in off hours?
So I was gonna actually mention that.
Yeah.
Technically speaking, so that the LED lights now are dimmable. We've gone through other towns and cities where they've required as a part of their conditions that they, get turned down at 11 o'clock or some agreeable time, between 11 and 7 or something like that. Or they turn off every other one just to keep a minimum level of safety, but to reduce the intensity. So we can do that if you'd like.
Do you ever consider solar lighting on your projects? Seeing that we're a green community?
In terms of powering
Yes.
the lighting by solar, we haven't done that specifically. we've done projects where we've done solar, PV panels throughout the site. They wouldn't be dedicated to just the site lighting. There are products that come with solar panels on the poles. I don't think they're particularly attractive. But we haven't been asked to do any of those, not to date.
So at some point, we as a society have to make that standard instead of optional, right? If we're going all in the same direction in energy consumption. But, all right.
I went by one pack of that, little windmills on each. I don't think many of them work.
Yeah.
I have a question of Mr. Kelly.
Sure.
The entrance to the property or to your center here, does it involve a 180-degree turn from the incoming traffic?
In terms of,
We just speak with this right.
They're going to do this in someone's back. I'm not a traffic engineer, but yeah, what happens
You might want to show one of the,
when you look at the
Other
plan
points.
with there's a parking bay right here. So you have car
Yeah.
parking here,
Right, yep.
and you have this traffic coming in this way.
Making them move
Do
it.
you see any conflict there?
We have to, I guess, is the concern more with the backing of the vehicles? I mean,
Well, the congestion that might materialize there is you have cars backing out from their parking spot, you're coming in, and you have other cars going out within, what is the scale?
well, we can, I think, there's probably two parts. The first relative to the, we'll call it the 180 turn.
Yeah.
We can provide the templates to show that vehicle can make that turn. And there is a secondary means of access to that site. So if you came around here, you could make this maneuver here. The parking, certainly, if someone's backing out of there, there could be a conflict. I will say these spaces are really on the far edge of the Walmart lot. I mean, unless it was, the week before Christmas, I don't think I've ever seen a car parked this deep away from Walmart. You'd have to be, you have to have about 650 other spaces filled, I would expect, before you park down here. But certainly understood that, is there a chance that during the busiest times of the year, Christmas time, that there could be potential conflicts if a car is making the move here at that exact time? Sure, but you need to have the whole lot pretty much filled. Like I said, we're looking at these spaces up in here.
Oh, I understand.
And it just doesn't, you don't see them filled that often. I don't think I've ever actually seen a car parked that far deep.
Here's what scares me.
Yep.
You have someone exiting, and she's not careful when she takes it tight like that. You've got someone coming in.
Right,
he or
you've got
she.
someone back.
Yep. I mean,
It doesn't feel right.
I guess we could.
If you could just describe,
I'm sorry.
everyone.
I think the concern I apologize, go ahead.
That's okay. If my concern's not legitimate, don't waste your time, but it just doesn't feel right. For the scale of the mass of this area, to have this very tight 180-degree turn within a very short space.
Is there any reason this could be one-way inbound?
It could be one-way inbound. I mean, our thoughts were that it's a very low velocity area. You would drive in the main entrance, you would slow down to take that turn in the first place. We didn't see a conflict with making that maneuver.
Yeah, I think the concern he was raising is just people coming out and making this move and someone's backing. Is that, if you wanted to eliminate, you could make this one-way in and force all the exiting moves to come out this way where there isn't a
If I were
conflict.
designing
Well, I tell
this, I
you,
wouldn't
so
do
what we
that.
could do to address that is, there's an agreement with this development and Walmart that these.
The shared parking?
Shared parking, these 47 spaces. So, we can look into, we can't guarantee that possibly that we could maybe eliminate a few spaces in this. Because we have plenty of parking for our development. There's 47 that were allotted for this as shared. So I think that would be reasonable.
And again, pragmatically, those spaces are so far removed from Walmart that they are not going to be occupied, except in the rarest of circumstance.
Oftentimes as well, you could designate,
consider doing this?
you could designate these as employee spaces, so that they're not customers and then.
But it still squeezes. I mean, you have 2 lanes of traffic here, and you've got people backing up. Did you consider one-way traffic?
Oh, I don't know if you necessarily want to do one way. I think it would cause a lot of
Or at least
unnecessary circulation.
make this-
Yeah, there would be a lot of collateral effects of doing that.
But I think if this was, if this were, a couple options, it would be employee parking here, so it's not, people aren't coming and going from these spaces. And then I guess we could also look at, does it make sense to have that be a one-way in? And then there wouldn't be any conflict of cars coming out that way.
So let me,
But I understand.
No, with all due respect, I don't agree. I think it's not a good solution.
I have a comment that kind of is related to this. My concern with this, and I'm an individual that's driving that road 5-6 times a day. And just coincidentally, this exact circumstance happened to me at 4:30 this afternoon. The increased amount of movement in here, forcing increased traffic to the main point of entry and egress into this currently Walmart parking lot. And my concern is this: exiting that plaza, a car taking a left turn to get back to the Cranberry Highway crosses 5 lanes to get there. There are 3 lanes that are heading down Toby and 2 that are heading out at that point. So what happened this afternoon was, because and again, this is not isolated to just this development. I've brought this up every single time. When they built the auto zone and then wanted to put more buildings there and were feeding cars onto Toby Road out of that side of the plaza, right, the Aldi side of the plaza, and now you're going to be feeding more cars onto Toby Road. We're depending on a stop sign and a stop sign, a left-hand turn, a soft merge of a yield sign that nobody stops at. We have 5 lanes of traffic that are moving all to this convergence that happens about 150 feet off of the Cranberry Highway. Have we looked at that on the traffic study? Because practically speaking, there should be a stop sign there, or not a stop sign, should be a light there to control the decision-making of the drivers. But there's not enough distance between the Cranberry Highway intersection and
The
what's
other one,
happening.
right.
So what Emmanuel is saying actually forces traffic to exit further down onto the Cranberry Highway and pour away from that intersection. What we're trying to accommodate all these land owners and the occupants of these land feeding into Toby Road, and Toby Road had not been constructed properly. And again, you need to be looking at everything that's pouring onto Toby Road. If you look at what's going to the postal distribution center, what's going to Cape Cod trucking down there, what's coming out of the backside of Walmart and Lowe's in that far intersection. This is, again, this is me as a planning board member, me as a resident, you as a future developer, and 4 more projects that come after you. What's this going to look like if we don't make the decisions here? Because we'll never get you back here again to say, hey, change the arrows in the direction and everything else. It becomes, it's easier to go to the dentist and have them pull teeth
Right.
at that point, right?
Yeah,
There we go.
we did discuss this very issue with Charlie and Ken in one of our earlier working sessions, and the issue was its proximity to that other traffic light, that there really wouldn't be enough distance to support another light there. I think that there'll be a pragmatic effect of, people choosing either to take the right out and go down and make a turn or what have you if it was congested at the time. And then we also hopefully take some comfort that, the overall Walmart development was permitted for higher square footage than we're actually coming in with. So hopefully some of the traffic mitigation that was a part of the initial permitting, will carry over for this development as well.
But I have to tell you, again, living in this community for 30 years, we're creating a circumstance that's one point of entry and egress where somebody is making the choices, the individual choices based on their own advancement out of a stop sign to cross 3 lanes of traffic. There could potentially be 3 oncoming cars at the same time when they're trying to make a left-hand turn. This is how we're killing people on the Cranberry Highway right now. We just created it on a town road called Toby. If I had my wish, knowing what this turned out to be, and if I sat on this board 5 years ago and I had enough clairvoyance, I would have said, move that entry and egress further down Toby Road. But right now, what Emmanuel is suggesting, I think needs some consideration, is that through the mechanism of, single points of entrance around your building and arrowing and traffic flow within your plaza, we can force more traffic to merge further down and exit onto the Cranberry Highway. That all being said, I realize that this is low volume usage in these buildings for what you're proposing us today, until we find out that the community doesn't need another dentist and Aspen's not getting the volume they want, and all of a sudden I'm ending up with another fast food restaurant in there, or I'm ending up with a restaurant that has a higher volume of traffic. So I would just add, again, a little bit of what Emmanuel's suggesting here, I think holds some value in how traffic flows out of that 5-lane point. Everybody understands the section I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Do you agree that's a tricky maneuver? Because the woman in the Volvo today, and I could see who was the driver, stopped the Volvo in the middle lane. And the reason she stopped was that the person that was coming out of the AutoZone side was also taking a left-hand turn.
Right.
So she balked, stopped in the middle of 5 lanes of traffic.
We definitely can commit to talking with Ken and Charlie and trying to work out whatever is feasible. We do have to live with the constraints that the site has imperfect ingress, egress, if you will. It would be great if closer to the Walmart, there was a second intersection there. It's just not something that's within our control, but that which is within our control, we're happy to talk about, and if there's something we can do to address the concern, we certainly will.
One of the issues that have kind of shown itself in the initial design is your turn lane going southbound kind of disappears into the traffic making a left on the Toby Road. It forms a pinch point there. It does widen out again, but if you could take a look at that particular traffic pattern.
Do you know which point he's talking about?
And to go to this parking lot, I've got to.
Just so we know.
Yeah. When you're coming southbound on 28,
Yep.
you have a turn lane,
The right turn lane.
and then it kind of disappears where it meets the northbound people making a left onto Toby. There's a pinch point right there where
And that's egress.
the people going northbound into Toby have to cut in front of,
See,
or,
they're showing curbs.
Oh, you mean if they make the move to get into Walmart?
right,
Doesn't merge, right. No, I agree.
if that could be.
You mean within the state road itself?
It's actually.
Well, it's actually, well, it might be within the layout.
I think the
it's more
best
in
shot is
Toby.
to make this
Right.
the main.
Well, the people coming southbound should be yielding. So if you have the green ball and you're making the left on the Toby Road due to Walmart, this southbound right turn move is required by law to yield to you. If they have the yield sign, they're not in control here.
Yeah, I don't remember if there's a yield sign there or not, so.
There is.
There is,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
But it
know-
doesn't mean it.
And again, I think it's important, I mean, it's certainly, I think in hindsight, if there was an ability to push the driveway a little further away, it would be helpful. But I think it's important to remember where we came from as well, which is that before Walmart came in here, we had Toby Road, which was a 2-lane road, 1 lane in each direction. It was in terrible shape. There wasn't a square inch of it that didn't have a crack in it. You had an intersection with a very high crash rate that was completely offset, that operationally and safety had deficiencies. You couldn't name them all. So we do recognize that there are some concerns. I hear you on the crossing of the 3 lanes there. What I see is and I think, quite frankly, it's almost a function of Wareham Marketplace not being developed yet or not being fully occupied yet, is that everyone leaving Walmart, it's a much, I mean, I see it taken out sometimes. People actually come to this stop sign. They don't even make a left to go to the light. They shoot straight through into Wareham Marketplace, fly by where Wendy's wants to be in the left, and come out the right on only drive and go that way and avoid the light altogether. So because there's really no opposing flows, I mean, there's only 5 to 10 cars an hour coming out of Wareham Marketplace now, this is a very convenient move for people leaving Walmart that want to go even 28 southbound. And that really wasn't the intent. You know, this, when you're leaving Walmart and you want to go north, you have to come out this way to get to the light to make that maneuver. But the whole intent and the reason Walmart spent all the money and time permitting this driveway was that this driveway was seen to be the more convenient route to get to 28 southbound. You get a straight shot from Walmart right to 28. You've only got to find a gap in direction going one way, which is, southbound. And then you come to a light where it's phased in such a way that the predominant movement that gets the most green time is that north-south movement on 28. So what you want to see is this being the primary route for people going 28 south. Come out at the stop sign, only deal with southbound traffic in this direction, which isn't that heavy because you're away from the commercial, through the light, and then you're off to the interchange. But what happens is because this isn't generating yet, and there's a lack of conflict, and there's when Wendy's is open and whatever other retail is open in there, and customers start to realize, I have to fight for a gap in traffic now with that driveway across the way. I think customers are going to realize fairly quickly that if I'm heading 28 southbound, either 195 or points further south or east, whichever way you want to describe it, this is going to become the easier movement. You're right, you won't have to cross 3 lanes, you're only going to have to find a gap in one, and you're not going to have to deal with finding, green light, green ball at the intersection. It's going to be the straight green ball on 28 south to get you out. So I do hear what you're saying, but I think what you'll see is that as Wareham Marketplace gets more filled and that driveway, is utilizing the same gaps as Walmart, I really believe that much of this traffic is going to ultimately shift to this driveway, which today is extremely underutilized. I think it's under 10 cars an hour come out that way.
I fully agree. So you're agreeing that's the safer movement onto Cranberry Highway?
I think that's the easier.
We're stating that it's the safer and easier way.
Correct.
And this can be corrected on this movement. If we want this to correct whatever decisions were made in the past, that the entrance that's used to enter into Walmart off of Toby Road should stay an entrance and be eliminated as an exit point onto Toby Road. Because from that back entrance, you can go north or south onto the Cranberry Highway.
Yeah, you can't do that. Yeah.
Okay, so
You need this driveway because anyone heading to 28 southbound
southbound.
has to come out this way to get to the light.
Okay.
And DOT was adamant that this would not be full access, either now or in the future, so it is an access point, egress point.
And you've done the template study of the large fire truck can make these turns?
Yes, and we had fire in our preliminary meetings as well, and they gave that
You
feedback.
had a preliminary meeting.
Well, we came in and sat down with the town planner, and he invited Charlie to come in. We'd rather know ahead of time what you want to see. There was some concerns that, red flags that we were then able to address instead of using up your time for those things, so.
Mr. Chairman, could we see to it that the next meeting like this has a planning board member on it? That the next meeting of this nature has a planning board member attending, please?
I believe someone was there from planning board towards the end of it.
Yeah, the chairman at the end of the
Yeah,
last
right.
Working session had come by.
If I can add about the fire truck, is we did provide in our package the route of a fire truck. We actually provided a movement of a vehicle that was actually larger than Wareham's truck, so we've since revised it with basically the smaller Wareham truck, and everything is adequate. So we're in the process of going back and forth, and he's been very helpful. I forget his name, but the lieutenant at the fire department, the assistant chief, I believe he is.
So what are you saying, you're gonna get us a bigger truck? Is that what-
Yeah,
No, bigger truck on us.
Good
No.
mitigation, yeah.
I guess we're saying we provided a lot that has circulation in excess of your largest
for future planning.
truck, yes.
Do you have occupants other than Aspen for these other buildings yet?
That's the only building that is pre-leased at this point. So the other are basically
We're-
conceptual sales.
We're talking to a lot of tenants, mostly national tenants. We're in various stages of, negotiations with them and whatnot. We work with a lot of them around the country. Aspen we do a lot with, so that's what brought us here. We like the area, we're doing some other stuff in New England area, and we're confident that, it'll be a really nice development when it's all done. So we're gonna be here for a good amount of time, we're not just building the Aspen and leaving, so we wanna make you guys happy.
Nice.
It's always hard to get the first. Once you actually are underway and there's a tendency there, it draws the others, so.
You can win a lot of goodwill by wearing Patriots gear here.
Michigan guy, so I love Tom Brady.
Yeah, I saw it right up here. It said Michigan all over the place, so.
I'm a Notre Dame guy, so I have a strike
see-
against you.
See, you
Comparison.
provided a cost estimate, have you done any review of this?
I haven't received authorization yet, but
trouble is we don't want
based on the
control of the
discussion
otherness,
we've had
you know.
tonight, I made a few
I don't think that.
notes here that I would like to address if we could.
Sure.
And this is something that I noted on the plan when I looked at it in terms of putting the cost estimate together for my review services, and that was the number of parking spaces that are on the site. When you go to the parking guidelines, based on the square footage of retail space and professional space, instead of 123 spaces, I only calculate that you need 57. That raises a couple of questions with me. First of all, how does that relate to the number of spaces that were allocated as combination spaces with Walmart during the special permit that they received? And if the spaces for retail and professional services, based on what the square footage is for each of your buildings, only get you to 57, why do you need more than double that?
So I'd have to look at the calculations on the 57, but most national retailers have bare minimums that they require per 1,000 square feet of their space, that they won't even look at a development if it doesn't have sufficient parking for what they at least deem their requirements. So a lot of that comes from what the national standards are. Otherwise, you instantly lop off 80% of potential retailers.
Well,
So,
let me just give you
well, just as
a quick calculation I did for each building, and that may be true, but wouldn't that be good information for the planning board to have in terms of the special permit which was granted to Walmart at the beginning, where a certain number of spaces were to be used, I think, between the
yes,
two?
there's 47
projects?
of those. Those are counted towards Walmart's count, not ours, although we have this shared parking arrangement that we
Right.
could utilize them.
According to the professional building of 3,600 square feet, you only need 15 spaces. Does Aspen Dental have a number that they typically like to see, so that they have adequate spacing and so forth for their turnaround and the number of patients that they work with on a
Sure.
regular basis?
I don't have the particular, their required parks, but yeah, they do have a number. Most of these retailers, I think 5 per 1,000 is pretty much the minimum that they require per 1,000 of rentable square feet. And then the other aspect is, you know, our square footage. We've basically allocated, trying to have flexible space in between the buildings so that it's not dedicated, especially once we moved away from doing a subdivision where each building would stand on its own as a lot. There is some crossover space in between the buildings. So we're not simply allocating for Aspen Dental, you know, X number of spaces. It's
I
for the
understand that.
overall.
You're not allocating, you're not dedicating a certain number of spaces to
Right.
them. I'm just trying to get to the total number.
Right.
It just seems like you overwhelmed the area with pavement for these three buildings that are relatively small. Even if there are national chains that require so many spaces.
I don't have
can you
the,
give us an idea of what they might require, so that you could compare to the number that you
the
have?
ballpark used in the industry is 5 per 1,000 of square feet.
Is that how that would calculate out?
I'd have to run the math on it, but I'm sure it's fairly consistent to that.
Sometimes, it's actually sometimes even higher than.
I think, I mean, if I could just, I think when we looked at this site, and, you know, this site had a potential for 20,000 square feet, and we were building 16,000.
And how many parking spaces were already permitted in the 2 iterations before?
So similar, the latest iteration in 2014 had more building area, but I believe similar spaces. It had a similar concept. I mean, typically 9 times out of 10, we're talking about not enough parking spaces, not too many.
just-
You're, in this case, talking about too many parking spaces.
It just, it seems like there are, and especially with the comment that was made earlier, and I witnessed the same thing myself, that I even think that during the busy season, which would be Thanksgiving and Christmas, that I never saw the back part of that Walmart parking lot with any traffic or any parking in it.
I would say, though, from a safety perspective, to the extent that the customers can park within kind of the inclusive shell of these three buildings versus going on to the adjacent 47 spaces, to me, that seems like we don't necessarily want to encourage people to be walking across the huge parking field of Walmart
Well,
to head this way.
I understand that, and I would share that concern. It does bring up a couple of things, though, that with respect to this. The first is, and you've talked with the board here at some length about traffic and the possibility that that secondary outlet onto Cranberry Highway is more logical in terms of safety and getting people away from the main intersection.
Agreed?
Let's assume that is the case for the moment, and if you were to focus on that as being the main exit point, is there anything that you can consider in terms of the internal configuration of your building layout and your parking that would more likely be to force them in that direction rather than to be attracted toward the Walmart parking lot and out the main entrance? Your entrances
actually-
into the site are essentially based on the use of the main entrance to get to your property.
Right.
And that was the intent originally, of course, because that's where the main entrance to the entire complex was. But if we're recognizing that as an issue,
Right.
is there a potential or a possibility of looking at the orientation of your buildings and your parking configuration to make people look in the other direction in terms of trying to get out of the place?
I think the intent here was that with the drive lanes, because if you look here, talking about this as being the more problematic, we really only have one drive lane here versus having multiple points where, cars coming out of parking can feed up here to go to that other site. So,
Well, the
signage
draw-
obviously is something that,
The draw is going to be to get to that main entrance from the existing parking that's in the Walmart site right now. And the main,
on the
the
way
main
in,
source.
this is only egress, so.
I know that.
So they have
I
to
know
come in
that.
from there.
I know
But
that.
if I'm, if I'm the resident or the customer here, and I look over and I see this area congested, I would think that this is my better bet anyway, pragmatically. So hopefully,
Well, you'd probably never see it until you got there, because that third building, once you put that in, it's going to hide that intersection. You're not going to really be able to see it.
well, signage is certainly something that we can talk about as far as, directions, directing the flow of traffic.
So Charlie, you're saying, back to Emmanuel's suggestion, one-way flow to that back roadway, and then they can make a choice to either go left, come back out to the Walmart main entrance, or right to go onto
Well,
Cranberry Highway?
I don't think I'm making
Can
any
require
particular
it.
suggestion at this point in time, because I haven't studied it.
Yeah.
My comment was based on the discussion that all of you have had, and that it appears that, as your traffic engineer has suggested, that that would be an appropriate place for a lot of that traffic to go. But unless you push people in that direction,
Right.
based on the experience of today and what the Walmart site itself is, how do you get them to go that direction unless you design it in such a way that they're more attracted to it, is all I'm saying.
Or
And
maybe,
I haven't looked at it in terms of all of the detail of your site plan to make any kind of a judgment as to what the appropriate response would be. Maybe one way in now, or one way in one direction is appropriate, maybe it isn't. Maybe taking a particular driveway away as an entrance and forcing them to go deeper into the property before they make the connection in, may be a possibility, I don't know.
well,
I'd have to look at it a
Yeah.
lot more deep than I have
I
now.
mean, we certainly will talk about it, as often and as in-depth as you would like. I think we have to be careful that a lot of people, by necessity or preference, are going to end up down here. So if we only had this being the required exit out of here, we're essentially then creating this as a drive lane through a parking lot, and that would definitely not be
Oh.
advantageous either.
As I say, I'm not making any,
Encouraging, yes.
I'm not making
requiring-
any particular suggestions at this
Sure.
point because I haven't evaluated
Right.
it all. I'm just hearing the dialogue back and forth, and it seems to be a consensus that that's a good safety feature to look at.
Well,
So
one,
we're
one,
all for
one soft solution perhaps is some strategically located signs that just,
Well, sometimes signs work, sometimes they don't. People
Direct you.
ignore signs sometimes. But one other question, if I may, Mr. Chairman. With respect to the amount of parking that's there, would you give any consideration to the possibility of not constructing the entire parking lot now? Given the fact that if you can come up with some estimates for parking that say this is a necessity, I'm willing to look at that. But in light of the fact that there's such a difference at this point in time between what the guidelines say you should be requiring and what you've shown, would you consider the possibility of taking that parking lot, which is all by itself, next to the boundary of the Walmart piece, dedicating that to potential future parking if it turns out you need it, and simply leaving it as a landscaped area for now?
I think I think yes, and I think we do have an abundance of parking, so I would suggest that we could consider,
This is not right, just don't do this.
We have to think of it in chunks, but we could eliminate this entire row of parking.
No, you need to eliminate that whole thing if you're gonna do it, in my view, because
This
that's a huge area.
entire area?
Yeah. You can dedicate it if it turns out that you need it, but if you don't, then you've got that less amount of impervious cover that you have to worry about.
There was some thought in aligning the site, is that we align these parking rows with the existing parking.
I have no problem with that either, if it turns out that it's needed. That's an effect, you don't want staggered approaches or anything, you want things to line up.
Well, we can look at, intuitively, I'm thinking how much over the minimum are we? And my first thought is that this parking row could be eliminated, but we could also look at the next one, which is 12, which would basically designate 26 parking spaces for future, if needed. So under the condition of approval, we could revise the site plan, close off this entrance, and turn this into a temporary grassed area that could be used for parking in the future.
Well, with the board's consensus on this, I'm just bringing this out as a suggestion, that maybe we get some numbers for what national requirements would be for either of these retail spaces. Make sure that you've got sufficient there for Aspen Dental, and see how that compares to the number of spaces that you actually have. If the number is significantly different, maybe we could simply say, okay, we don't need all those spaces. But personally, I'd like to see that information. It would help me to make an evaluation, and perhaps it would the board.
Sure. Can I ask a related question to parking and impervious surfaces? Does this system eventually feed out into the storm drain system on Toby?
No.
It's totally isolated onto the property?
Totally
Yeah,
self-contained,
100%.
Mark.
Okay.
I don't know whether they've done any soil testing out there. I think that's one of the comments I will make once I get them to you. When they put the large subsurface infiltration drainage area in the parking area, which is right adjacent to you, they did find groundwater. And the infiltration system that's in there is above the high groundwater. But at your site, you're far enough away from it, and there is enough variation from place to place that it would be good to check that out.
we have some
Also-
data in our stormwater report.
Okay, well, if it's not based on actual ground testing, that's another comment that I'll make, because you can't take the soils reports from the USGS, NRCS report that they have and go completely by that. That's a general guideline as to what you may expect, but site-specific stuff is much better.
Yep. So
And it'll
we
give you
used
something
we used a site-specific soil testing data that we got from the Walmart site in that time period, 2010.
But did they do any testing on this site?
They did, yeah. So we have,
All right, if you have that data, just show it on the plans, because I don't
sure,
remember.
I believe I believe it is on the plans.
Okay.
So when you take a closer look, you'll
I will.
see a few, and we're happy to walk you through that as well.
Did you given any thought as to what would change if one of your tenants required a drive-through?
Yes.
Yes.
The short answer is yes.
Yeah.
So we had some conceptual drawings with a drive-through on the southwesterly building.
One, yep.
Building 1, as we call it. So there are some conceptual drawings of that. At this point in time, it's not what we're contemplating. We'd have to come back before the board for a modification if, you know, an economic necessity, bird in the hand, if you will, you know, came our way.
All right. Any other direction you wish to?
I'd like to ask a question, please. Could you help us visualize the elevations on the site plan? I had misread it, thinking that the blank wall with the single door faced the loading dock and but apparently it faces, it's like an entrance. Is that building specific to this site?
Yes, it should be. Just trying to see where the door is. I believe this, they may be misprinted, because this is the long,
No, that's the short.
that's the short, you're right. So this is the rear elevation, as if you were looking at the building this way.
Here, I'll hold it for you.
Yeah,
So then
and this is the front of the building.
and so the dressy facade faces the loading dock and the dumpsters.
don't think so. I think
Yes.
it faces this side.
No, it
Yeah,
faces
And
the
this
parking
side,
lot.
and this side. The two of them. One faces here and one faces here. So this fancy facade is facing the dumpsters.
Yeah, they're showing
And
on
there's
both
no,
sides.
and there's no entrance there. So the only entrance is from the north and the south. I'm just curious if
And
that,
the front of the building, yep. And then, north elevation. Yeah, so if you were looking this way,
Right.
there is an Aspen Dental sign proposed on these, on both sides. The closest to the Cranberry and Seth, so here and here.
no, I understand, but the main facades, one of them faces the dumpsters, and the other faces the other
Faces the
side.
parking lot.
So I was confused, thinking
Yeah.
that the dull blank facade was actually facing the dumpsters.
Right, no,
But
that's
it's
not.
not, that's an entrance.
That's the entrance on the backside, right?
I wonder if that's probably a template that they,
It's probably based on a prototype, and we can,
yeah, it doesn't,
it doesn't make sense to have a sign facing this way if you really don't have good visual,
Yeah.
so
yeah,
we'll
I
make
think
a note.
it's a template that was just plunked on. Okay, thank you. So they'll look at this, right, obviously?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just because this seems a common thread here with most of these proposals. The mechanical units on the roof are totally encapsulated and out of plain sight
Yeah, they're screened by the parapets, kind of, so you won't see anything. We don't build anything.
on
you
all
can see-
sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of other questions, if I might.
Sure.
With respect to those buildings, so that's a franchise design, right?
Correct.
The
No,
lighting,
it's site-specific based on,
The lighting, the color scheme, you know, the font, if you will,
it's the
all that
style
is, right.
they use.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
With respect to the lighting, have you actually evaluated the lighting that exists from the Walmart site that sort of spills over onto this site to see whether or not there was a way that you might reduce the lighting on your own site, taking advantage of what they already have?
I will defer.
for the mic.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do that.
Could you?
I think in this case, because we're not controlling the Walmart site,
Yeah, but you're not going to change the Walmart site.
pardon?
You're not going to change the
And
Walmart
we don't have
site.
any control over the Walmart.
So
site.
whatever light intensity comes over and spills over onto you from them, in essence, you could take advantage of that, could you not?
Yeah, I mean, the
Right, how many
closest light is
candles
right
do we
in this
get?
location in Walmart.
So if you were to,
They're gonna, that template is gonna reach to the edge of this parking lot.
you know that for a fact?
Well, what I want to say is that we're looking at our site on our own, and we have to be responsible for our site. And
But you're already getting the value of whatever Walmart may be giving you on their site, is all I'm saying. And if you could take advantage of it and reduce the intensity of lighting on your site
Yeah.
so that it's not quite as glaring,
Right.
wouldn't that be a beneficial thing to do?
But to answer your question, we haven't analyzed the light coming off of that site.
Could you?
I think, so what we're really talking about is maybe 2 poles? What would be,
Well, we don't know. I think we need
There
to
should
look.
be a photometrics plan on
Yeah.
file with the
Yeah,
Walmart.
we can look at.
we
what
certainly can look at it. I don't think it'll be
Well,
a sufficient,
looking at the
a
plan, I don't
significant
think
amount.
gives you the measurement that I'm asking for. I'm asking for what's there today. You can look
Sure.
at the other plans all day long, and it won't tell you anything.
Right.
But if there's
There's
some way
definitely
that you
some
can measure
carryover
the
of light.
existing intensity that you're seeing at ground level from their lighting system, maybe it comes into your property a little bit to where you don't have to have quite so much, is all I'm saying.
We can certainly take a look at it.
That would be good.
And last question on the traffic, please. Have you considered, does it make any sense to consider a spine that goes from, excuse me, I've got to get up. Create this as a spine that feeds these, alleviating this problem here.
Except we don't own part of the area you're.
Which part? This here?
Right.
So would that be something that would be to their benefit because their parkers have a problem? And it would, you simply approach it and say, would you let us use this? They don't have, they can give you an easement or, it seems to me that planning-wise or circulation-wise, you're creating a spine here.
No, it seems, I think, as Derek pointed out, we can look at this and see if there's ways to modify the.
Thank you. Yeah.
And even if it's, I mean, I know signage doesn't always carry the day, but if it's reinforcement signage and the intent is to direct motorists 28 southbound with arrows that tell you that.
No, but it could still be, they could still be going out that way,
Right.
but you're eliminating that 180 gooseneck.
Yep. No, I understand the concern. We'll look at that.
Thank you.
Related to traffic, did you see a behavior change at the intersection of Toby and Main Street, the opposite end?
You know, when we
be
put the
two-way.
three-way stop in years ago, I know there was a lot of concerns first, is how is that gonna work? Is it gonna back up to Kingdom Come in every direction? I mean, I've been before, either your board or the zoning board, I'd say 12, 15 times, and I've been down there. Unless I'm missing it, I haven't really seen an issue there. It seems that it works well as a three-way stop, and the cars, you know, everyone gets their turn in line, if you will. Whereas before, when Main Street didn't have a stop sign, you could see backups on Toby Road that went up to that driveway that got you out of Wareham Crossing. So I think the three-way stop has improved operations, bringing everyone to a stop and letting everyone kind of have their fair share, if you will, to get to the intersection, not just, you know, Main Street goes and Toby Road waits until you find a gap. So I think it does work better from what I've seen.
Thank you.
Any other direction you want to add, Charlie?
Until I look at the plans, I don't have any more questions.
This is a public hearing, so if there's anyone here that would like to comment on the project at this point? I don't see anyone. I hope we gave you some direction
No, it's,
as to,
this is why we do this. We want your comments and input. I know there's some board members who aren't in attendance. I don't know, my understanding, I serve on boards in my town, Kingston, and people can catch up if they miss one meeting, not two, but one. So to the extent anybody needs further information, if they weren't here, we're happy to talk offline, provide any answers to questions that they didn't have a chance to ask when they watch the replay or what have you. with your direction, we'll work with Charlie to answer his questions, to try to get things narrowed down as well as we possibly can before he would submit his recommendations.
If I could add one thing, is I know we've provided the town with the review fee and the W-9 form, but I guess there's some sort of length of time before your CFO can actually open an account. Is that accurate?
I don't know what the time frame is. It goes from one office to another.
Yeah, I was just wondering, knowing that information, could you start your review, or would you have to wait until that happens?
So long as the fee has been submitted, I know that it'll eventually make its way to the proper.
We have.
I might
Yes.
get to
Yep.
submit a bill for August.
We would appreciate that as far as our timeline, if you could
Absolutely.
accommodate us. Thank you.
Did you have a conversation with the water department, by any chance?
We have talked to the water department. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We will talk to them again.
Sewer? Sewer as well?
Water and sewer.
Water and sewer.
And what are we looking at for timeframe? You haven't started a review yet, so I don't know.
Well, I'm assuming that it'll be set up so that everything will be ready to go. And so long as the check has been submitted, I have no problem with starting it. So if these folks want to continue for 2 weeks, I'll certainly have the review done in 2 weeks.
That'd be great.
That works for you also?
Absolutely.
So that would be the 25th.
Is it too early to make a dentist appointment or still?
Never too early.
When you breaking ground? What's the plan?
It's up to you guys.
You got a shovel?
As soon as we can.
After
We
you
have to
vote aye,
deliver by
ready to go.
the summer, basically, so.
Already an Aspen on Cranberry Highway? Is that an Aspen?
No.
No, it's something.
I think that's a Pacific.
So I'd look for a motion to continue to this March 25th.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Again? Let him read till that a minute. Any discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Appreciate your time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
That's what I'm complaining.
So that's a little bit more fitting, what's that, like 20 foot scale? That would be more like 20 feet, right?
No, this-
The building is 18.
No, it's 18 to here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
18 to that.
This part is
25.
25. So, a little bit longer than that.
Next is the public hearing on the town meeting articles, Article 5. Bad storage.
I don't take that one. Come on, where is it?
The, what's this? All right, I'm confused already. It's Article 11, according to the,
So the agenda's incorrect?
yep. Now, there was some changes to this article that all right, the document I have here for January 28th has section 530 and amended to the sign bylaw, so that's not gonna work.
So what, Charlie, what did he say? That's Article 5.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Wareham Building Commissioner Dave Requena.
I was just going through the paperwork, and the note that I got dated January 28th, do we have something?
Well, in our packet is, you have something that looks like this? It says, isn't this first part was in Richard Coates' proposed article?
Okay, which one? I got one the same date, but it's,
Yeah.
but it's messed up.
Oh, this was, well, this is the one in my packet.
That's why I was just looking to see if there was another one.
You put it out?
It's new.
It's dated February 12th.
Okay.
It's just that, those two paragraphs.
Put that over there.
Okay, I got that same document.
I think the difference here is adding the sentence, "This restriction will apply only to items subject to state registration requirements."
It also looks like the last, the last sentence expanded, is that why it's in bold?
Well, not the entire sentence, just the, not all the bold print.
If I could just ask you, Mr. Chairman, which article are you on?
Article 11, the, amend section 530.
Okay, all right.
Now, let me get to the,
So the existing Article 530 says, "No person or property owner shall have or allow more than one unregistered motor vehicle, camper, or trailer, or parts thereof." We've amended that to include vessel. So now the amendment says, "No person or property owner shall have or allow more than one unregistered vehicle, vessel, trailer, camper, or parts thereof, ungaraged on any premises at any time, unless so authorized in writing by the Board of Selectmen. In no event shall any such vehicle, vessel, trailer, camper, or parts thereof be stored or located in the front yard of any premises within the town. A valid business certificate for sales of such equipment shall suffice as written permission from the Board of Selectmen.
And what we previously suggested was adding, this restriction will only apply to items subject to state registration requirements. And that didn't get added to the article that's printed. So if we want to go forward with that, we'd have to amend it.
Okay.
The logic behind that was a canoe.
Well, there was multiple issues with what if you have a vessel that doesn't require registration? Whether it's a canoe, a kayak, a sailboat, an unpowered.
All right, so my reverse argument to that would be, what if you have 5 or 6 9-foot boats in your front yard in a pile? 9-foot boats don't have to be registered. What do we do then? You know, I would ask the board to please consider that we are not out there trying to find people that have a canoe in their front yard. That isn't the intention for this, and I don't think
But-
anybody wants any more work. So it's
I
not.
understand your point,
Yeah.
but one gentleman brought up the point, the last time we went through this was, you may not intend it that way, but you still place him in violation if he has his boat ahead of the front line of his property.
So if you
So
have,
even though all his neighbors are fine with it, he's still technically in violation and could be fined for it. So I thought that was a valid point.
My other concern was the front yard conundrum.
Yep.
If your property doesn't accommodate you to put this in a backyard, and what I'm thinking of, if you go up in Shangri-La and you look at those houses along the lake, I mean, that slope drops off down to those lake areas down there. There's no accommodation you can make without a major engineering feat to get something into your backyard.
doesn't have to be in the backyard, just cannot be in the required front yard. So it can be in the side yard, nothing says that it can't be in any side yard. It could be on the left of the house, it could be on the right of the house, but in the required front yard.
But what if the property doesn't even accommodate that? I guess you're asking, you can go for a variance in it, but, I mean,
Right, I mean, you would,
there's a lot of small pieces of property that I don't think are gonna be able to accommodate not using their front yard.
Two choices, you get permission from the selectmen, or you put a registration sticker on it.
Well, I think one of the examples was, over on the west side of town, over where I live, there's a guy with an RV there. That, there's nowhere else he can go on that property except the front driveway and the front yard.
But
There's
is
not
it,
even enough side yard to get it around.
but is it registered?
That particular one is registered.
So it's not a problem.
Right.
picture having a neighbor that has,
So I got the first boat for you to go after. So
I'm just saying, picture a next door neighbor that has 8 boats on the property line, on your property line, that abuts his, that are just piled up there. We have
on the side.
a bunch of them. Well, nope, but it's on the side lot line, but in the front yard. So anything before the front of the house, if you take that line and make a line all the way across the property, that's your front yard. So if you had all the boats piled up against the fence in the front yard on your property line that had cats living in it, mice living in them, raccoons, that's the kind of stuff that we need help enforcing. And how the law's written now, we can enforce those. And we have a large number of complaints that come in for those types of properties that we cannot do anything about. There's a lot of properties in town. I mean, there's many properties in town, and countless numbers of people who have boats in the front yard that we don't get a single complaint for. But there's a handful that have numerous boats in their yard that we also don't have the tools to enforce.
But what we're worried about is the public view here. If they took those 9 boats with the cats and mice and rats and they moved it to their backyard, we're okay with that? It's not a health concern anymore?
Still more
No,
than
because
one.
it still falls under the junk bylaw. You shouldn't have that, but right now, vessels are just not in there, so we don't have, we just don't have the enforcement power.
Yeah.
It doesn't fall under the junk bylaw. I misspoke. I apologize. It's not called out in junk, how it's written in the bylaw right now, so we cannot go after vessels as it stands.
Are you looking to make that change?
We are. That's what this,
So if
That's what
if-
this
if-
article
if that
amends.
homeowner moves it to the backyard, you have a mechanism. So the abutter that called the complaint in and says,
no, because this amendment says no more than one, unregistered. This is so that you don't have yards full of unregistered boats, vehicles, campers, trailers.
okay, and can you talk about this, this permit for sale would only apply in a business aspect, right? Because,
Permit for sale says that if you have a business license from the town to sell, then clearly you can have trailers and boats and campers in your front yard for display. Otherwise, that would,
but if you don't have that business license,
then you should not have items for display in your front yard. This says that if you want it in your front yard, you can get permission from the Board of Selectmen. If you have a business certificate, that suffices as permission from the Board of Selectmen. But you can also go and get permission from the Board of Selectmen to have items in your front yard. If you had a hardship, which is gonna be less, I would think the people who can't put an unregistered vehicle in their side yard, I think are gonna be far less than those who can't, or who can. So I think if you had a hardship situation like that, they could go in front of the Board of Selectmen and get permission pretty easily. Or they can apply for permission relatively easily. I just think that if we want to look at what the greater good is here, I think as this is written now, keep in mind, this is in the bylaw. The only amendment that we're asking for here is to add vessel. Unregistered vehicles is already in here. Camper's already in here. Trailer, parts thereof, it's already in the bylaw. It's an active bylaw. It isn't getting abused now, and we don't intend to abuse it later on. I don't think anybody does. I don't think that's the intention of any bylaw. The whole intent of having this bylaw in any town is to keep the town orderly. That's what it's here for. And if you restrict our ability to do that, then we don't need the bylaw.
but if a guy owns 9 canoes, Dave,
Yep.
the state of Massachusetts does not require him to register their canoes.
Okay.
And he says, I'm not getting rid of these canoes. They all float, they're all vessels, they're all good, and I got a big family, we all go canoeing on the 4th of July together, and I need 9 canoes. And I can only put them in my front yard. What is our response back to him, or what are the selectmen gonna say? You know, go ask for a variance, or?
So, for one, and I don't mean any disrespect by this at all, Mark,
Yeah.
I've never seen 9 canoes in anyone's front yard.
Well, it could be
I've
sunfish.
never seen one canoe in someone's front yard because they can easily just get grabbed and walked away. So, again, that's not the intention, and also, you don't have to register a canoe. So I myself, or any other commissioner after me, or any other building inspector for that matter, if our bylaw says unregistered, and it's a vessel that's not required to be registered,
Right.
then that clearly states that it's exempt from that.
Yeah, that's why we requested this in here, is to say, we don't have an
I wasn't
exercise
at
other
that
than.
last meeting, so I
yeah.
apologize.
We
We don't have an
know.
exercise that
So
really,
that goes back to last fall when we went through this process. That seemed to be the biggest sticking point was, what if, I have an unpowered vessel that doesn't require registration? So we just thought this would fix that.
Okay.
because what if you do have, look, if you own your boat, you don't have a loan on your boat, there's no lien on it, you own this thing, you're not required to keep this thing insured. You're gonna.
There's no insurance requirement here, it's just
No,
registration.
but, right, so if you take it off, it's winter, the lake's frozen, why keep the boat registered? Consequently, why keep it insured? So now you own an unregistered boat that would be registered partially of the year.
Registered and insured are not synonymous.
No, I understand, but if you did have if you had a lien on it, insurance would be required. The bank would require you to have insurance on it. What I'm saying is just free it of any external requirement. Take it off, take the registration off. Blew the motor on it. I'm not paying for registration on this thing and paying taxes on it. Just get it off there. So now I own a 22-foot ski boat and I own a canoe. And they're both in my front yard. I'm in violation because now I have two unregistered vessels?
Renew your registration?
To me, that would be the cheap way out to do it. But I don't think, now I got two boats that are sitting in the front yard for 5 years and the guy's just paying $100.
I'll get relief.
Well, I mean, the
from
law
Board of
says go
Selectmen.
35 miles an hour down the street and you go 40, Mark. It's the same, there's rules to follow.
No, I understand that,
Everyone
but-
has rules to follow, and again, I don't mean any disrespect, but I've never been to a complaint call that had one boat and one jet ski, or whatever you want to call it. It's usually typically multiples,
Which is probably a boat dealership.
and no.
No, not if you
Not
drive
always a
around
boat
town.
dealer.
Guy just goes around and collects free boats?
Yes.
But I get my
I
concern.
could take you to 12
Yeah.
different properties on this town next week.
Yeah, my concern is that, I don't know if we're taking a step forward and a step back here. We've discussed other subjects with you that said we need to get some control and relief from going to the zoning board for every little issue. It seems that every time this is gonna come up, we're gonna push more traffic to the zoning board for variance.
Two totally different topics. Two entirely different topics.
Okay.
You're talking about non-conforming structures and zoning violations as far as keeping lots
Yeah.
clean and orderly. They're not the same, they're not even close to the same, Mark.
Yeah, this is what,
Not even close.
I gotta go on your professional opinion here. I don't want no disrespect to you, I don't want
Yeah,
to
yeah,
challenge you,
so
but,
They aren't the same.
yeah.
Yeah, they aren't the same.
Just-
Non-conforming
It
buildings.
seems to me this pushes more traffic for variances in this town.
Doesn't the bylaw, the way that it's proposed, offer relief that if you want to have more than one in the front yard, you can ask the selectmen for permission?
It does.
So that if that circumstance were to happen, where somebody had 6 canoes and he had no other place to put it, in order to be in compliance, he could make a request of the Board of Selectmen to keep them there, couldn't he?
Yeah.
But the question is, I guess, as David is suggesting, how many of those situations are going to arrive that can't be addressed in some reasonable way by adoption of this?
Right.
Well, they are reasonable until someone sets a precedence. See, I got this 20-foot ski boat, blew the motor in it, so I bought a donor boat. So now I got 2 unregistered boats in my front yard with the intention of getting the Merc Cruiser out of one and into the other.
Well, then go get a permit from the Board of Selectmen that says for 6 months, I'm going to make the motor change, and then one will be gone.
Right.
If it's a temporary situation, Mark, there's an avenue to get relief. Again, we have to look at the greater good of the town. Okay, if you see the amount of complaints that come in, I don't even consider any amendment unless I see a high volume in instances that, so we have a large number of written complaints that come in every year regarding Article 530, right, Section 530. They're all over town. They're in Onset, they're in Buzzards Bay, they're in Wareham, they're everywhere. East Wareham, West Wareham, they're all over the place. If you end up in that situation where you blew the motor in your vehicle or in your boat, and you bought another one, and you're in the process of having to change that motor out, if it was only temporary, it wouldn't be an issue anyway. But if it was gonna be like that for a long period of time, then you could go in front of the Board of Selectmen any Tuesday in any week. Explain your situation, and I think you'd be fine if that was your situation.
What do you-
But that's not the case, and 99.99% of these, that's not the case.
When the complaint comes in and you're asked to address it,
Yep.
and they own a 38-footer in their front yard, and you tell them you gotta get it out of there, what is the penalty to the individual if they don't get it out? What is the consequence?
So what happens typically is we give them a verbal, and if they don't comply at all, we give them a written, and then we give them a citation. But in every case, they're always given multiple chances to comply before they ever get a citation.
What is the time duration with that?
It all depends on the case.
Is it a verbal for the next 30 days and then written 60
It's usually
days?
21 to 30 days, sometimes longer. If we have full cooperation, then it goes 45, 60, sometimes 90 days.
And what would be
If we have an owner that says, look, really in a pinch, this is what I'm trying to do, we usually tell them, as long as you're open with us and you keep us informed, then we'll work with you. But if we just get ignored and nobody does anything, then those are the times when things move forward. There are some properties that would take a long time to clean.
What is the citation value on that? Is it a $100 citation, or is it a $1,000 citation?
Under 40U, the town passed a new fee schedule, I believe it was 200, 250, and 300, first, second, third offense.
So if you got nailed on all three, you'd pay under $1,000.
First, second, and third offense, yes, would be under 1,000.
I'm just trying to understand the process. To me, if I had a 38-footer junk boat and you told me to go dispose of it, there's no way I could get rid of it for $1,000. Just write me the citation. I don't know if we're solving.
The citations would continue as long as.
Oh, okay.
Gets attached to your tax bill,
Yeah.
Mark, right?
Yeah. All right, good news is I don't own a boat, so that's all.
Free and clear. I think the situation that you just described, though, is gonna be the anomaly. It's not gonna be what he's gonna deal with on a regular basis.
Yeah. Well, again, I don't deal with this problem every day. I know that it's near impossible to find an outlet to get rid of a 38-foot boat without chopping this thing up and costing thousands of dollars. That we're chasing this problem down for 3 years before that homeowner, if they had enough money to put it in the water, they would have put it in the water.
Granted, but I look at it from the other side of the coin as, A, do you want to live next door to it? We didn't cause the boat to be there. The person that owns the boat caused the boat to be there. So, in reality, he created the problem. He'll have to deal with it, whether it be monetary or whether it be weekends cutting the boat up and taking it to the dump in little pieces.
Yeah, I think, yeah, as long as,
David,
Yes.
you're the one that has to live with this. What is your preference for this article as to how this article should read? Just one time, please,
As it's written before you.
as it's written. Okay.
Yes.
with the registration? Are we looking at the same version, February 12th?
The only addition that we had suggested earlier was the sentence, the restriction will apply to items subject to state registration requirements.
It's
Other
in-
than that-
It's in my copy, is it not in your copy?
It's not in the warrant.
Ah.
It's not in the printed warrant.
But
These
as
were,
David, are you okay with that?
these were our recommendations from a previous,
Okay.
as I understand
Thank you.
it, then David doesn't want that last sentence.
I just think you're opening up a window of vessels that don't need to be registered. And there's a large quantity of vessels that don't need to be registered.
I read that the same way.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's that window there.
but don't you run into, like the one you described, don't you get into health issues and Board of Health violations when you get into rodent-infested piles of junk, you know? whether they be a
Yeah, but
boat.
what if there's a pile of boats that isn't full of rodents? I mean, again, to all members of the board, this is in our bylaw. All we're asking for is to add vessel.
But we're not, I don't think anyone's disagreeing with the word vessel. I think
it's
it's,
in-
it was, at least
in
I'm
the bylaw.
struggling on the registration part of it.
Yeah. So,
Is a floating barge a vessel?
it is.
So if somebody owns docks that they keep out in front of their house and they put it into their front yard, they're not registered, are we gonna make them go through exceptional hoops to, without going through a variance? Even an individual's time to come in front of the selectmen is a cost. Because the Coast Guard has a definition for vessels and the state has a definition for vessels, so.
I'm just trying to figure out a nice way to say this. We're talking about asking someone to go in front of the Board of Selectmen and ask for permission. That's all we're saying. That's it. We're saying that you can go in front of the Board of Selectmen and ask for permission. Is that an undue circumstance? Is that a hardship? Is that asking somebody to do too much? To go in front of the Board of Selectmen and ask for permission? I don't see that as jumping through hoops, Mark. I'm sorry, I just don't. If you don't have a regulation in place, then it's going to happen. Even if you push aside everything that's already in place now, this gives us an added mechanism to prevent it later on. Okay? The town bylaws have to keep towns looking a certain way. Other projects come here before you. You guys ask for traffic studies. You guys ask for lighting analysis because you want properties to look a certain way and to flow a certain way. Well, this is the same thing. This is zoning, okay? We want properties in town to look a certain way. Neighbors expect to live in a neighborhood that looks clean and neat and orderly. They don't expect to live in a neighborhood that has piles of boats and trailers everywhere. So I don't think we're asking anyone to jump through hoops, and I think that's an unfair comment and it's an unfair analysis. We're asking people to abide by our town's regulations, which are already in place, and if you can't, if you have a hardship, go in front of the Board of Selectmen and ask for permission. That's all. That's all we're saying. And it's in. It's already here. We're just asking for another word.
Well, my only observation is, we're not just talking small lots here, like, we are a waterfront community. A lot of people can't afford to put their boat in a winter storage yard, so they put it in their driveway, which could very well be in front of the house.
Yep.
It's only there for the winter, neatly covered, doesn't bother anybody. But this bylaw would be putting them in violation.
It would not. It would not.
Why?
Because those boats that come out of the water for the winter usually stay registered all winter. I've had a boat since I was
But
old
it's
enough
still
to
in the
drive
front
it.
yard.
Unregistered boats.
I didn't think any boat could be in the front yard.
No, unregistered.
Okay.
So, for all the years I've had a boat, you don't unregister your boat when you take it out of the water. Those numbers are on the side of the boat and it's a decal. And they're not easy to take off, number one. So when it goes on the boat, it stays registered.
Well, plus,
Trailer stays registered. You have a plate on it. You don't turn your plate in every year at the end of the season.
It's too restrictive, though. The fact that I have to jump through a hoop, as simple as the hoop is, if I own one canoe in my front yard, you're telling me I have to go in front of the Board of Selectmen?
that's not how it's read. It says you have one.
Okay, they have two canoes in my front yard, I'm in front of the Board of Selectmen. Fine. A canoe and a kayak in my front yard, because sometimes I go canoeing with my wife, and sometimes I go kayaking by myself. And I live in Shangri-La, and I'm not gonna haul this thing up and down, because I don't go on the lake in town here, I like to go in Buzzards Bay. I just feel we're tasking the selectmen in an area that we don't need to with the unregistered piece. But it doesn't even matter, it's just a question of, put it on there and let the town meeting decide. Mark's vote's not gonna matter, and neither is ours, it's gonna be the 400 people that are on town meeting that will decide what this is. So I think it's a reasonable request to present it, and if they think my way or they think some other way, then they'll express that in the town meeting.
I agree with David that we should delete that last sentence. And may I make a motion so we can move on?
Please.
I move that we, regarding...
Hold on just 1 minute. Is there any public comment for this?
Yeah.
Would you come forward?
Name's Joe Hobbs, from Wareham, lived here since 1969. I ran Turbo US since
How do you use the,
1995. This one? Okay, again, my name's Bill Hobbs. I've lived in Onset for over 20 years. I've been coming and living in this town for many years. My question first to David, how you doing?
Good, Bill, how are you?
Do you want to use me as a generalization of one of the 10 that you're talking about in regards to all these trailers and boats, since you've been coming and trying to get me out of there and this, and now we're doing this, and do I fall in that category?
I would prefer to not speak about individual properties.
Well, you know I am. I'm right there next to the Ford dealership, Cape Cod Moorings, Wareham Marine.
Yeah, okay.
Been there, done that. I got boats there.
You do?
I got trailers there.
You do?
I got campers there.
Yes, you do.
Okay. Now, you say something about a business certificate?
Yes.
Okay. 1995, I got 2 business certificates in the town of Wareham. Paid $50 a piece for them. One was called Wareham Marine, one was called Cape Cod Marine Towing, and Cape Cod Marine Systems. When I went in there, I had a license to sell brand-new boats to the state. I had dealer plates for my trailers. I still have new boats up there that, they're not registered, but they still have statement of origins.
Okay.
I have many boats there.
You do.
And obviously, I'm not gonna register them all. Some of them don't have motors in them. I got one boat there, the big one, the 33-footer. It's about $500,000 boat. All it needs is 2 engines and 2 outdrives, okay? I had there's a couple of them there. So now, if I fall into this category, I gotta stop by moving that big boat out, even though it's not a boat. And anyway, you mentioned vessel, and I think you ought to change this, because vessel does not cover anything I have. According to Cambridge, a vessel is a large boat or a ship. Okay, that's by Ofcas. Then you go to another one, it's the same thing. Large vessel or a ship. You want to go to boat, that's a whole different description. And that goes right down to a canoe with a paddle. Okay, so are we talking vessels? Are we talking boats? A canoe can be registered, or has to be registered if it has a motor on it. But if you take a motor off it, you don't need it. The same as I have brand-new boats up there that are called Craig Cats. You know, some of those you can run on the lakes because they have electric motors on them.
Mr. Chairman, is he speaking to me or is he speaking to the board?
I'm speaking to the board, but I'm just making sure you're hearing me, because you're the, and like we said, you understand, this is Wareham, this is a big boating community. I have boats, a lot of people have boats. Somebody blows a motor in their boat, costs them $10,000 to replace the boat. So they go out and buy another one for $2,000, okay, run that, now that one is unregistered. Now say they have a trailer, or they have a camper, and that's unregistered. Boom, you're in violation. All right, now if you have an unregistered vehicle, what you're telling me is you can't put that out on your front lawn and try to sell it. Even if you have a house, you're selling a car, and you bought a new one, you want to put your car out front, you can't do it. And now one more question I want to know is, where in my property is considered a front yard? You would know that. I have 3 streets.
Cranberry Highway.
Cranberry Highway. So the neighbor that's behind me over there that's doing all the whatever, he's not in my front yard, he's in my backyard, right? Well, do I have 3 front yards? Am I limited to now to putting it on one side of my property? What's the front yard, David? That's all I'm asking.
Do you have a current business certificate that authorizes you to buy and sell these?
Oh, I have a business certificate, and like I said, I did sell boats there, but, yeah, I have all that. I've had it since 1995.
All right.
I mean, and I just want to make sure before David leaves and goes down to Dartmouth and tries to have those people move their boats. So these are my business certificates right here. And also, I know some of the stuff can be in the garage, as long as this garage is all right. Is this considered a garage?
It is.
Okay, that's great. Because I've got those two going up on my property somewhere. So I'll be able to put some of the stuff away, but
Could you limit it to this particular bylaw or the suggestion for a bylaw or not?
well, it is, the
Personal-
bylaw is if it's not garaged, you can only have one. If it's a garage, you can have as many as you want, is the way I read it. So I'm asking him, of these new buildings that I just bought, if they are considered garages, which he told me, so that takes a little bit of the pressure off me, depending on how far. But I have the business certificates, so I guess that makes me clear, right? Wasn't that what it
I
says
don't know
right here? As
I
long
don't
as
know
you
the
have a-
particulars of your,
Well, it says right here, if you have a business certificate, it's proof and it's okay for the selectmen. Let me say that right here in one of these, in the
It has to be a
bylaw.
business certificate pertaining to the sale of
Valid
the items
business
on the property.
certificate for sales of such equipment shall suffice as written permission from the Board of Selectmen. That includes unregistered vehicles, vessels, trailers, campers. In 2014, it was just vehicle, and then you added the camper and the trailer somewhere in the last couple of years, and now we want to add boat, because that's, I don't know, you don't like people having boats in that. But anyway, so I just want to know before I have to go, I mean, I actually had to cancel, I told you, I had to cancel a trip to Daytona because I had to come to this meeting, because it just came up, or I was supposed to be in Bike Week. So I'm not all happy about it, and I just want to get it straightened out. You know, if you got residential property, fine, you know? Even it still should have like two or be able to do something. But you're talking about me, I bought business property, you know, I have over an acre there on Route 28, and it's been business for forever. And then because I have a new neighbor comes in, they don't like it, and he calls everybody on me, Board of Health, I've had environmental, I've had it all, no problems. We ran into a little problem, that's why we've been having problems, but, you know, I don't know, does this suffice, as it says right here, that a valid business certificate for sales of such equipment shall suffice as written permission from the Board of Selectmen? Now, is this written permission from the Board of Selectmen? And I walk away and say, okay, I don't have to worry about getting this $1,000 fine or whatever if I can't get all those boats out of there in 30 days, which is, you know, is impossible. You know, and I got a boat down on the front there. I'm ready to get out of there, but that boat's unregisterable. You know, I'm turning it to guard, and I had the Coast Guard come down, and they put a number on it, and I went to the registry to try to register it, and they said, oh, you can't do that, the Coast Guard knows you can't do that, after I went through all the work to try to get this boat with a number on it and registered it. So that's unregistered, but it is a boat. And it's like, you know, I mean, I've been cleaning that up a lot. I put a lot in there, had the Board of Health come in, I moved all kinds of stuff, I've straightened it all out. I just sold the towboat business not too long ago. I was doing that 24/7, I didn't have the time to do all the work on the property. Now I'm getting down and, you know.
You understand, we're not here to interpret it tonight. We're here to discuss the addition of vessel to the bylaw.
So you're not interpreting that, what it says here about
We're not interpreting your particular situation. We're not a court.
the
We're not gonna
certificate,
make a
it says
decision
here
on.
suffices, and I have a business certificate, so this does not suffice.
What is the
I-
purpose of your business? I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
What is the purpose of my business?
What's the certificate for?
That's for Wareham Marine and Cape Cod Marine Towing and Mooring Systems. I've been doing mooring inspections in the town of Wareham for 20 years.
I think what Mark is getting at is it may be a business certificate, but it's not a business certificate for the sale of boats.
Of course it is. I was selling brand-new boats. I had a certificate from
Is
the
that what
state
the
of Massachusetts,
certificate
I mean, from
says?
Massachusetts.
Is that what the business certificate says, for the sale of boats?
Well, Wareham Marine, I was selling boat trailers. I was selling boats.
You
I
keep
mean, that's-
using the word "was." Does the certificate specifically say that you're a licensed dealer of boats?
Well, I don't know, what do we say, Wareham Marine? Marine would be boats?
That's an interpretation.
Marine's interpretation of boats?
If, I don't want to chase it down the rabbit hole, but if you have a certificate to sell used automobiles, it specifically says you're
Yeah.
licensed to sell used automobiles.
But that's different. That's a different, like, you can only have so many dealerships in selling used vehicles. There is nothing with the boats.
But to his point, every one of those vessels could be used for his hauling practice. They're just not in the condition to haul.
And 4 of them that are
But-
there are not mine, that people brought there and left there.
But this,
I mean,
I think, I'm sorry. I think what was helpful is your definition. I think vessels, it leaves too much room for interpretation. It should say vessels and boats. That, I would agree that you add the word boat, and somebody will, I think, get you on a technicality on that, because I had said,
I'll have a talk with Ken. It's been researched,
okay,
okay? Just, you know, I'll have a talk with Ken and see what he says.
okay.
I mean, are you saying that now you want it in there? Because, I mean, a little while ago, I thought you didn't want it
No,
in there at
I've
all.
never
Now you're
objected
saying
to
you
the,
want
I've
vessel
never
and boat?
objected to the word vessel. I've never objected to the word vessel. I'm actually saying, keep the word vessel in there, add the word boat. My concern is this registration piece. But still, I'll qualify this, and for your benefit, sir, this is just to get a public posting of a discussion at a town meeting, that I think everything you said has a valid, you know, has a place, and it's on the town meeting floor. Here, we're just seeing if it's allows enough flexibility and can be interpreted based on this one paragraph, right? Which still gives options. It doesn't close the door. To your point, is that any objection to this, based on interpretation, personal positions, whatever, can go in front of the selectmen.
Gentlemen, excuse me, Merriam-Webster, vessel, a container, such as a cask, bottle, kettle, cup, or bowl for holding something.
That's one.
A person into whom some quality such as grace is infused. A watercraft bigger than a rowboat, especially ship. What more do we want?
So don't leave your cereal bowl on the front steps.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Goes on and on and on.
That's why I'm saying add the word boat in. It's because,
It's included.
I think it's
It's
unnecessary.
included.
all right, I have no problem with this. I don't have any problem with it because it goes to public vote. And any opposition should have been here tonight, so I'm on board. You're the professional in this area. I just want to make sure it's fairly played.
I appreciate that.
My
So would-
question was, should we remove the last sentence?
I believe,
As written in the warrant, that last sentence is not there.
Good.
It would have to be in the form of an amendment.
If we wanted to insert it.
Correct.
So I agree with David. I don't think it should be there
I
either.
agree.
thank you.
So
That
just
about
for the record.
registrated?
You want to make a motion?
Yes.
I'd like to speak with this, I was letting this go
That
on.
last one about the registration, you're not putting that down, so now they don't have to be registered? Or are they,
All we're discussing is the wording of it. It's still gonna go to town.
yeah, but on the one here, it isn't on here, although I did see it. It only pertained to vessels that could be registered. Like a paddleboard, doesn't be registered, but if you're gonna consider it as a boat and drop that, then you're back to the same, is what I'm saying there, you know.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Jim, my name's Cranberry Highway. I'd like to know how many instances that that the town has been tasked with going to court to try to enforce this bylaw as written, and how many we've lost in doing so.
I don't have that answer. Dave, would you care to?
We go to court fairly often. We don't take matters that are not in the bylaw to court. So I can't say that we go to court on anything related to a vessel because we don't have the regulation to enforce it, so therefore we wouldn't take it to court.
So
About vehicles.
Campers, vehicles, or any of it.
Is it monthly, weekly?
Campers and vehicles, I mean, we haven't lost any. When it comes to items like this, typically we don't. I can't tell you exactly how often we go. A couple times a year, a few times a year. But we don't go to court unless the person who is in violation completely ignores us.
So that's a better question, is how many violations you do in a, say, course of a month?
A month? we have a lot of different zoning violations. So I mean, throughout the year, we probably do,
In particular to what this article is referencing, not the zoning in particular, just in particular to this. How many?
Say vehicles.
I don't have those numbers with me. So,
It couldn't be a lot then, right?
we do,
10, 5, 1, 2 months?
yeah, no, we probably do, in a year, we probably do about 15 of these, maybe more. But we probably receive 50 of these. And in a lot of instances, it's a phone call, maybe a written violation after that. And in most cases, we get compliance with just phone calls and letters, a few conversations with the owner. But if it's not in the bylaw, we don't even make that call. We don't ask somebody just to be nice. We don't say, would you please take those boats out of your front yard to be nice? We don't have the regulations, so it's unenforceable. We do have many complaints regarding boats and campers that we can't do anything about.
We already have campers in there, right? So that's enforceable. But anyhow,
Campers
what
just
I like to
came
say
through
is,
last time.
I think we should try to keep it to what's required to be registered under the Commonwealth of Massachusetts laws. And then a lot of what you're talking about could fall under the, junk. It's unusable in its present condition. So, I mean, it could be processed under that effect. It's not, I'm not totally against it, don't get me wrong. I just think it's a little general, canoes, kayaks, sailboats, small prams. I mean, some people might have 5 kids, they don't have a garage, they can't put it in the garage. The neighbors doesn't like them, he says, the kids are a bunch of brats, and, so, that's my only point, really. I know what you're saying when you're trying to improve the public view and perception, but we don't want to be the Stepford, the city of Stepford and the Stepford wives either, everything has to be so-and-so. People have individual rights and their own properties. They pay their taxes on those properties, and they should have rights to kind of have some stuff if they want to have it. When they want to have a car or two to work on, or a boat, and it's unregistered, and they don't have they're down the cottage area. Some of them don't have backyards, as you're saying, Swiss Beach area.
You can have more than one, it just can't be in the front yard.
Right.
No, you can't have more than one in the backyard either, according to this. Ungaraged any times unless authorized in writing. No more than one unregistered vehicle, vessel, trailer, correct.
Yep, on the property.
And it just can't be, but I could have 5, as long as they're registered. I could have trailers, boats, cars, whatever in my front yard. They could be total junk. But if I put that sticker on it and I give the town $5 excise, it's okay.
It doesn't have anything to do with
Do you know what I'm
the
saying? I'm just, that
It
just.
doesn't have anything to do with the excise, so this
I know
can't
that,
get
$5 is-
misconstrued.
no.
This has nothing to do with the excise
But that would
tax.
be
This is
okay.
but it's
Right?
okay because it's
Yeah.
a registered vehicle in use, okay? So again,
Maybe.
without, this is getting.
I'm with you. I
This is getting
understand
blown
you.
out of proportion here. When we talk about vehicles, vessels, trailers, campers that are in use, they're in use. But when you allow them to sit on your property for 10 years and rot and cave in
Then the junk.
then, with all due respect, sir, I've been to court in matters of junk. It doesn't, it's broad and it's harder to enforce. In a lot of these cases, you have to be specific in order for them to hold up in court. If our bylaw is not specific, then it doesn't hold up in a court of law. So there are areas where we can be not as specific, but there are other areas where you have to call out the items, and this is one of them.
Mr. Chairman, there is probably an infinite number of combinations that could come under this. I think the purpose of this whole thing is to make his job efficient, more efficient. We could sit here all night and come up with more and more and more options. What if it's
way to do that.
what if it's my airplane? There's all kinds of airplanes of vessel.
I don't-
Airplanes of vessel. So I think we should
chalice, could be a chalice in your front yard, that's a
Yes.
vessel, right?
So, I think.
I don't have any problem with it, big
Yeah,
thing,
I
my
think we
main
should
point,
take David's, I'm sorry, finish.
my main point is the smaller boats and stuff. You know, if it's not required to be registered by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and a small boat is, if you put a motor on it, you have to register it, right? If it's not required to be registered by the Commonwealth, I don't think we should include it in there. That's all. And like you said, the town will decide at town meeting floor.
Right,
We
so,
brought this up last year. We tried to have it inserted. They didn't want to insert it. They did get the trailers in and some of the rest of it. But I just wanted to make my point on that.
I completely agree that our system's working. I know this seems a little bit out of our wheelhouse, no pun intended, right? But we're doing our due diligence, we're asking the question, and where it may be opposed. What's being asked of us is to represent a bylaw right now. I just want us to be able to go to that town meeting and be able to look them in the eye and say, we looked at, after the interest of the entire town population, you had an opportunity at public hearing to speak to this. There's, to your opposition, or not opposition, but just to comment.
My comment.
This gentleman's comment, it's in here. If somebody can watch this tape 100 times over between now and town meeting and say, I want to reinsert the registration fact. So this can be suggested at town meeting, but let's move forward to David's recommendation, not put it in there right now, and we'll let the population decide whether they, or, again, I'm saying we.
I second
let me
that.
say.
I second it.
Okay,
There was a motion, right?
sure, I can turn it
Second.
into a motion.
Close the hearing?
Close the hearing.
Well, we haven't finished Article 5, we haven't finished the entire article yet. But I would like to know offhand what your thoughts are on Section 530.
I thought we just decided.
We just decided.
No, not, 5:30 or 5:45?
Delete
5:35?
5:30, 5:30.
A motion is to recommend favorable action for Section 530?
Delete,
It would be the whole Article 11, but...
as it is without the sentence, yes.
Okay,
yes.
so eliminate the sentence. On 535, outdoor storage, the recommendation we made was, the warrant says, shall be concealed from public view by a solid fence or wall not less than 8 feet or more than 10 feet. And what we suggested was, shall be concealed from public view by a solid fence or wall sufficient to shield the stored equipment from public view.
I have a problem with that. From day one.
We just said visions of 10-foot fences everywhere. We didn't think that would be very attractive.
Could we not put a period after, any type which is not for sale shall not be permitted? David? How do we define wall? Will it be a chain link fence? Will it be a concrete block sloppily put together?
I'm
Is
sorry,
that what?
what does it read right now? Is this what it reads? Without the wall comment?
Can you read what you have, Mr. Chairman, please?
Outdoor storage, which includes the storage of construction, manufacturing, service, wholesale equipment, materials, junk, or heavy motorized equipment of any type, which is not for sale or rent and has not been properly authorized by the town. What the sentence that we questioned, now, does this deal just with commercial equipment? Going by that?
Outdoor storage will include storage of construction, manufacturing, service, wholesale equipment, materials, junk, or heavy motorized equipment. Not for sale, that's not- No, this would not be only commercial, so this would be commercial and residential yards. Again, with excessive construction equipment, old construction equipment, materials, all throughout the property, that are not enforceable under the junk bylaw. So I believe you have the exception. I have an older article here. I have one of the first ones. I believe you have the exception that, not for sale.
I actually have one, this has how it exists right now.
Okay.
If I could read this, Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Well, first thing, 530, the title of this is ungaraged motor vehicles. What's being proposed is to change the title of this to outdoor storage. So under ungaraged motor vehicles, no person or property owner shall have or allow more than one unregistered motor vehicle.
Excuse
We
me.
just did
Mark.
that.
Oh,
We are
530 is done.
amending section 530, we're adding section 535, they're two separate actions, it's not
Correct.
one replacing the other.
Oh,
Yeah.
my apologies.
535.
Right now, we're addressing 535, the new section.
Okay.
So outdoor storage, places on Cranberry Highway, main routes, businesses that just have their construction equipment out along the road, all around their business. This is just saying that you have to keep your equipment off the road, neat and organized, behind the building, inside of a fence. It's actually a pretty common bylaw in a lot of towns. You know, they just don't want equipment all over the property. And that's basically what this is for. If it's not for sale, like you have places like Morse Lumber, you know, places like that that have items for sale, that stuff is in the back, it's neat, it's organized. So again, if you have a business license for it, then it's fine. If you have the business license, even with the business license, construction equipment, we're just asking that all your equipment be placed neat and organized at the rear of the property,
Out of public view.
out of public view.
And the only comment I think we had when it was discussed before was the vision of having 10-foot fences everywhere, when, if you had somebody, I'll say a mason with a pallet of brick and a cement mixer, a 4-foot fence would cover it fine, yeah.
I'm not gonna argue that, Mr. Chairman, I'm not gonna argue that. You know, again, I don't ever see that scenario becoming affected by Article 535. Article 535 is, again, I don't wanna name specific properties in town, but, Article 535 is intended for those larger nuisance properties. In most cases, again, not to be specific, in most cases, the equipment is very old. The materials are very old. They aren't even in use any longer. Couldn't be used if they wanted to use them.
I think what's come up in the past is what is considered junk, and I think you just defined what junk is.
Yep.
As long as you can defend that.
I've actually sat in a courtroom many times in these cases, and junk becomes tough to use in a courtroom, because what's junk? You know, you would almost have to define junk by everything it possibly could be. You'd take up 3 pages in the bylaw. So by narrowing down what they could be, is easier to defend in a courtroom.
So does this sentence, a valid business certificate or sale of such equipment shall suffice as written permission from the Board of Selectmen also apply to 535? Could a bog owner come and say, hey, this is historical bog harvesting equipment, I might use this someday, I want a variance to be able to hang on to this stuff and leave it in public view?
Sure, well, it wouldn't even necessarily be a variance if you had a clause in there that says they could get permission from the Board of Selectmen.
Though that sentence does apply to the second paragraph, the new paragraph, right?
Again, I'm seeing an older article here that I had on my desk, so it could very well apply, and if it's not in there now, that could be added at town meeting without issue. I wouldn't see that would.
I just think it needs to be highlighted to give you some relief.
Sure.
Because if that's not crystal clear that they can go beyond you before they need to go to a courtroom, it just perceives you as the judge and jury of all things junk.
No, and that's never the case.
Yeah.
That's never the case, Mark. So every violation letter has the property owner's right of appeal. It has to by law.
Okay.
So whenever any official, any town official writes a letter or any violation notice, you have to give the owner a right of appeal. So they always have the right to go before the zoning board of appeals and appeal it. Or if you give them the avenue to go in front of the board of selectmen, which there are a few items in the bylaw that allow them to go in front of the board of selectmen for permission, and there's actually a couple in Article 5 alone, but they can go in front of the board of selectmen to get permission for a specific amount of time.
Yeah.
But they always have a right of appeal before court.
Yeah, I think, but for the purpose of town meeting, just to make it crystal clear and eliminate any potential discussion, because if you never got a violation, you don't understand how the system works. Just add that, if it's, because ours is broken into 2 paragraphs here. I don't know if this is how it actually gets presented, but just add that sentence as a repeat down here to say, you do have that option.
Sure.
You know, there's a vehicle to go beyond just enforcement and, you know, coming to some reasonable resolution.
I agree with that.
Yeah. I'll just give you one example, because it did come up in an earlier discussion. The collection of historical farming tractors. You know, you want to display 3 of these out in your front yard. This would say that, you know, is this unused construction equipment?
But that's the 1 in a million case that goes before the board of selectmen and gets permission.
Right.
Or the zoning board of appeals.
Yeah, but those are all the types of things that suck up 90% of a individual's time, right? So,
Right, but I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
These articles don't get amended or added or proposed or written because I just want to put them in there, or anybody else in my office wants to put them in there. That's not how these are created. These are created because of complaints that come in. And we don't just consider these because we get 1 or 2. We consider these because we get 30 or 40 a year involving these matters. So there's a lot of work that goes behind this, as you know.
yeah. But I think
Between the writing and everything, so.
Fair and level playing ground for everyone, because somebody that collects old F-150 pickup trucks doesn't register these things and says, I want to show these off to the world. I got $100,000 dumped into these 3 trucks right now. A disgruntled neighbor, just to put the screws to it, could say he's in violation of a public law. But the selectmen, it's a reasonable explanation. I collect antique trucks, I want to put them in my front yard. Nobody should have any heartburn with that.
Exactly. Understood.
As long as there's a vehicle.
Pleasure, gentlemen.
Again, no pun intended.
Is there anyone here that wishes to comment on this proposed change?
David, David, does it work for you if it said outdoor storage, which includes storage of construction, manufacturing, service, wholesale equipment, materials, junk, or heavy motorized equipment of any type, which is not for sale or rent or in use, and has not been, add the words in use, and has not been properly authorized by the town shall not be permitted, period? Does that work at all for you?
I have to think about that a little bit, Emmanuel. I think that may be. I don't know, I think that may be tough, because you're just telling somebody that they can't own equipment. They can't own,
Yeah, you have many landscapers that work out
Yeah.
of their
No,
home.
but they're not in use, no, but they're not, they're junk. They're not in use, they're not for sale or rent or in use.
The town's definition of junk is anything secondhand is junk. Anything used, so
But
buy
the
a
wo-
car, you
well-
bring it home, it's junk.
Well, the word is
no,
in here.
that's.
An exaggeration,
Yeah,
I
that's
know.
not correct, but so, construction equipment and materials, not for sale or rent.
Or in use. I mean, it could, look, let me withdraw. I'm only trying to eliminate the
No,
other
right,
problem.
I'm just trying to,
Yeah.
you know, you got the wheels turning a little bit. So I wouldn't want to tread on that line where we'd be telling someone that they can't own the equipment. It's just, if you, and I'm just gonna make my own, quick thoughts on this. So if you own a business and you own some equipment, you have a hard time and you close your business for a little while, do you have to get rid of that equipment, or can you keep it in your backyard fenced in, so it doesn't bother your neighbors? You can keep it neat, clean, organized.
Good point.
You know, so that's the first thought that comes to my mind. I think.
Well, if it's out of sight, you're not gonna get the complaint in the first place.
Exactly. And that's how 95% of these come in, neighbor complaints. The other 5% come in town employee complaints. But they're always complaint driven. We don't ever go out looking for these things. They always begin with a formal complaint.
It's reactive.
So,
Do we have, point well taken, thanks. Do we have any concern that down the road, somebody complaining that there's an ugly wall that was built next to their property or across the street from them? But I'm looking to you for advice, really.
yeah, I don't think someone's gonna spend a lot of money on a wall.
Well,
I
that's
think
the
they're gonna
trouble.
spend more money on a wall than what the equipment's worth. I think
That's the
they're probably
trouble, it's
gonna,
gonna be an ugly
I
wall.
think they're probably gonna put up, I think they're probably gonna put up a fence or a, yeah, but.
Your call.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, can I get some insight on how you wanna handle 535?
I'd like to make a motion to present it as written with the addition of adding that sentence on the first paragraph, because I don't know how it's gonna be displayed. Of a valid business certificate or sale of such equipment shall suffice as written permission from the Board of Selectmen. I just think without that,
So you want to add that same phrase that's in 530, add it to 535 as well?
yeah, my only concern is we're not presenting just clear information to the public. And to me, that, now that I read that sentence again, says I had to have a business license. It doesn't really allow them to allow the Board of Selectmen just to create an exception or a variance to a circumstance. It's just not clear in that that's an option. Especially if, believe me, I'm sure there's a few yards where you look at, get rid of the junk, and it's screaming $200,000 to get rid of this stuff legally, not in the middle of the night. And somebody's not gonna have the money to put up a fence, or not want to put up a fence, or, you know, but they might have a legitimate reason for having that equipment there. The business went out, you know.
The way this is written is an out anyway. If someone came to me and said, hey, that big truck in your front yard's gotta go, I would read this and say, all right, if it's not for sale or rent, I'd go get myself a for rent sign and throw it in the windshield. And if anybody asked me how much, I'd say 10,000 a day. Covers me under the law.
A valid business certificate for sale of the equipment shall suffice as written, where are you seeing as?
Second line, heavy motorized equipment of any type which is not for sale or rent.
So we don't need a business license to rent? Guess not.
See where you would.
Yeah,
But
this is
that
not
would- that would
necessarily
be
a
back-
business.
That would be a back door. That'd be the first thing that ran through my mind. I'd run right out and get myself a for rent sign.
I don't think that sentence would, Mark, I don't think that
I
sentence
think we're splitting hairs
belongs
again.
there.
We're building a camel here.
Make your motion without the addition. And I'll second it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the addition of section 535 as written to present at town meeting.
Second.
The only other discussion was the height of the fence, but I think that's probably something that could be discretional with the
That's David's problem.
commissioner.
But that's not in this version
So
of
you're,
February 12th.
you're striking the authorized by Board of Selectmen, ZBA, a valid business certificate? Is that what I'm hearing?
No? From where? Which article, from which section?
The new section 535.
Unchanged?
Are you wishing to add
No.
an appeal?
No,
Or just as written? All right,
as written here.
okay.
Yep.
Which, the only difference between what this and the warrant is the reference to the fence. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Outside of that, just for the record, I've already said this once, but just so you know, that in any situation that comes through any zoning violation, they always have a right of appeal. Mass General Law states that, and it's on every violation. So every violation that goes out, the owner always has a right of appeal.
But where is that appeal? At the ZBA or through the courts?
No, it's always to the ZBA first.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So there is a local level.
There is, yes.
I would like to stray from the agenda just a little bit, because we've had someone waiting patiently for a continued public hearing, and I think our town, I don't see the, you're not doing the sign by law thing, are you?
I think there's only one article unsigned, correct?
Right.
I wasn't going to, but if you want me to stick around, I'll be happy to.
No, I think that, did Alan leave? I think Mr. Slavin was here to explain that.
You left a long time ago.
No, I was just gonna move the Borrego special permit ahead, just so people wouldn't have to hang around unnecessarily.
Appreciate that.
I know they were glued to their seat listening to this riveting discussion.
So I do have revised plans, 7 full size. As well as responses to Charlie's comments.
All the trees they cut down for solar panels, this is what,
We're not
that's
cutting
where
any
it
trees for
goes.
these solar panels, that's a great thing. This is the response to comments letter, this just lists, and then this is the letter from
You wish to share?
Yeah, I'll take one, because I don't have the updated.
Thank you.
Would you like a summary? So,
Where's Mark?
oh. Bathroom break, maybe.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Stacy Minahan with Beals and Thomas. Borrego apologizes that they could not be here tonight. And thank you to Charlie for turning around the peer review comments. So we received the peer review comments, and we revised the plans to address them, which is what you have before you. And we also provided a response letter going through each item and noting what was done or our discussion point about it. I'm happy to run through the details of that if you'd like. Charlie and I did catch up briefly in the hall, and I think we're in good shape. But essentially, there were some clarifications on information that we included in our narrative. So we've answered those questions. Some clarifications that were requested for the plans to make sure that, it was obvious what was being proposed. And I think So again, just let me know if you'd like me to go through number by number, but I think the remaining outstanding item was Charlie's comment regarding soil testing, which we spoke about briefly while we were waiting for this hearing. So we had proposed to do soil testing prior to construction as a condition of the permit. We did discuss, and we were going to try and undertake the soil testing prior to the next planning board meeting. Hopefully that confirms the assumptions. If it doesn't, in terms of where groundwater is, if it doesn't, then some slight revisions to the grading may be necessary. Nothing that would be insurmountable. Timing-wise, it may be challenging for us to turn around another revised plan set prior to the hearing, that next hearing. But either way, I think we'd be in good shape to have, a final plan submitted to the board as a condition of permitting if needed. And if possible, we certainly will submit it prior to the hearing. Was there anything in particular, Charlie, that you think that you'd like to run through?
Just a
initial
couple of
comments?
things,
Yep.
just so the board's aware. I had made a comment at my initial review about the National Heritage and the fact that this had authorization from National Heritage. I believe you've been copied now with the copy of that permit, which says that in spite of the fact that I guess there's some turtles around and a few bugs here and there, that NHSP says it's fine.
Yes, yeah, this area of the property is part of what we lovingly refer to as the master turtle permit with Natural Heritage. So we have kind of a set of criteria that we go through and we coordinate with them for projects and just confirm what needs to be done. So we included a copy of that permit, the general permit for kind of the broader area, as well as the specific email from Natural Heritage for this project saying that it was good to go.
There were several waivers that were requested as a part of the application. I think we're both in agreement that really the waivers are not necessary. But if the applicant insisted that they wanted the waiver, they would have to go through the Board of Appeals for it, because your board isn't authorized to grant waivers unless it's specifically identified in the zoning bylaw. A lot of it had to do with landscaping and so forth. I think you can, just looking at it logically, it makes sense that we're in such an area that you're not comparing this to the other project that you heard tonight. This is off in the middle of no place in respect to that. So that buffered landscaping and everything is essentially taken care of by the plan that you already see. So any of the other waivers that might have been there, I don't really see the necessity for them. But if the applicant feels they need them, that's up to them. The decommissioning plan, we're gonna need some added information on that. The cost proposals that they put in a couple of spots I didn't feel was sufficient, so they're going to update that decommissioning plan. Anything that has to do with conservation, I know that they're dealing with the Conservation Commission, so they will get a separate order of conditions from them, or they'll get their negative impact statement, whichever is the case with the commission, so that's no big deal. There were some details on the plans themselves which have been addressed through this response which I got, so I don't think I need to waste the board's time on that. The one thing that I did essentially insist on, that we would not wait until construction begins to make sure that we've got a 2-foot separation from the high groundwater to the drainage area that is actually going to take the majority of the surface runoff. And that the applicant and through Mr. Kane have agreed that they'll get a backhoe in there and do some tests so that we're confirmed that the soil is appropriate and that the groundwater is deep enough that we don't have to worry about it. If it is, if they find that the groundwater would impact the drainage, they will adjust the grading accordingly. Now, granted, maybe they can't turn that around within 2 weeks if you need a continuation, but if you were to approve it, there is still the special permit to write. Then there's a 20-day appeal period that has to run between when the permit is filed and when it actually takes effect and gets recorded. So there's a time period in there with which if they need to make the adjustment with the plans, they could. So I think that with appropriate language in the special permit, that it will be subject to a final adjustment of the grading plan. Given the testing results, I think that would be adequate. It's only one spot here that is of concern, and so long as that's taken care of, it should be in good shape. Access roads, there was a question about the access road, and I was informed tonight that all of the access roads, including the access from farm to market in and circulating around the bogs, will be 20 feet wide. Made an adjustment in the surface conditions so that it will be gravel. The gravel's specified as to what it is. Mass specification has a certain criteria for defining what gravel is. So they've identified that within the plan, which is fine.
And just one clarification on that, Charlie. So all of the proposed gravel roads are a minimum of 20 feet wide. The existing road from farm to market is an existing road that we're not planning to improve, so it's sufficiently wide as it is, but we're not proposing anything for that.
Then I misinterpreted your statement. I thought you said that all roads would be 20 feet.
The proposed roads that we're creating for the solar array are a minimum of 20 feet wide.
But that's all inside the fence.
It's the ones, yes, that are surrounding the panels. All of the existing bog roads, Wareham Fire had agreed were sufficient access.
Do you have a letter or anything from Wareham Fire that says that they're satisfied with the condition and the width of the access road to?
No, I haven't received a letter. We did speak with them when we were doing the design. We incorporated their feedback, and then I included them on the email I sent a couple weeks ago with the revised plans, and I also emailed them again today. So that's kind of a similar process to what we did before. We didn't receive a final sign-off from them, but as far as I understand, we've addressed everything that they had raised.
In other projects that either this board or the ZBA has approved, they've said that they wanted a 20-foot road. The large project, which is off Charlotte Ferns Road, Charge Pond Road, comes to mind. So if the fire department is happy with the access, and this board is happy with it, that's fine, but I would think that for your own record, if it's going to be less than 20 feet, you might want to be something from the fire department that says they were happy.
And I
so
can measure it
if
as
you get
well,
that-
because it's quite possible that those existing agricultural access roads are already at least 20 feet wide going through there. It's pretty wide.
There are some places where I put a scale on them, and they were roughly 10. 10 is not bad, so long as you've got the clearance.
Right.
So if they want to take a ride through, and if they find narrow spots and they're still happy with it, at least you've got something on record with the board that says they're comfortable.
Yeah, and Wareham Fire did tell me that they were going to be taking a ride through the site when I coordinated with them before we had submitted this application. So we're confident that we've addressed what they need. I'm certainly happy to follow up with them as a condition and ask them to put it in writing if that would help the board.
Except for other, details on the detail sheets themselves. That basically takes care of the major things that I had some concerns about.
Are you okay, Charlie, with the, I haven't seen the new plan, but the gravel entrance from farm to market road?
I read that they made a change in it. I haven't actually had a chance to review the plan to see what it is.
Yeah.
It's on sheet C 3.2. It's much narrower. You can see from here, but it used to span kind of the full width that was spoken along Farmers Market, and we've narrowed it up, as Charlie suggested.
My comment with respect to that was the approach to Farm to Market Road is very shallow. Anybody driving one of those big trucks when they're coming out, potential chance of just driving right out on the road without looking. If it's more of a right angle, it means that they'll more or less come to a stop before they make the turn, and it's just a safety issue. So they can construct their entrance of the construction material they're going to propose and shape it so that it will force them to come more of at right angle and make a stop before they pull out.
Right.
That was the purpose behind that.
Yep.
But that's not shown. Is this the new plan? It's still,
This is the barrier that's gonna cause them to kind of come out at a 90?
So previously, the construction entrance used the full width of this existing
Right.
road. So this is an existing road where it's dotted.
Yep. So you just.
So
go-
instead of, so we've cut it here so that they come out right rather than coming like this, almost as
Merging.
more like a yield, yeah.
it's not possible to do a bit
Well,
more?
yeah, in looking at it,
We want to use the existing
it doesn't do
road
it.
and not
Not
undertake,
create a new one.
right, tree clearing and open that up
So,
even wider.
what is this, just blocks? How are you making that?
It's just where the gravel is placed.
In looking at the sketch, it doesn't do what I expected it would, because you've still got a pretty good throat of material where they can just keep on
Right,
driving
they can-
without
they can
coming to a
create
stop.
their own.
What needs to happen is that that portion of it that is on the side where it says stabilized construction entrance, it needs to go more like this.
We can make that change very easily.
Is this used for, like, the berry trailers and stuff like that?
Mr. Chairman, if I could?
Sure.
My name is Jim Kane with the 80 Makepeace Company. Yes, it is, but we're happy to meet with Charlie on site and construct it in such a way as that his concern is dealt with.
What is done for the agricultural purposes and, you know, the harvesting and so forth coming out there from time to time, I'm less concerned about that than I am this process to where you're gonna have a lot of equipment going back and forth, not familiar with the site, not familiar with the area, and just coming out there without looking.
My only thought is, for them to make a 90-degree turn, they're gonna obscure most of Farm to Market Road when they make the corner. They're gonna block most of the road.
When they spill out onto the road to make
Yeah.
to make the cut.
And what's wrong with that while they're making the turn?
Well, I guess it's fairly straight there.
Sight distance is pretty good in both directions there. If it's done just as a temporary thing for the construction vehicles that are a part of this process, that's what I'm after. And after it's done, if 80 Makepeace Company would like to return it to something that's more convenient for them, I don't have a problem with that. It's just this particular project where you've got a lot of people that aren't familiar with the area, stuff coming in and out. They're gonna be, I assume, hauling some material out of there in order to do some regrading up in the northeast corner. Who knows who those trucks are going to be. So, just a safety concern for this project. And when you get done with it,
We're happy to do it, Mr. Chairman.
Fine.
And, one last question from me is, will you be removing trees or not?
There is a fair amount of, not a fair amount, a slight amount of tree removal along the eastern edge of the site.
Emmanuel, if in your plans, if you look at sheet TP1, this is a sheet that I asked them to incorporate the limits of work on the existing site plan, so you can see what the changes would be.
Yeah, that's a good point, Charlie. So TP1 shows the tree line and the limit of work, and then on 4.1, there's the, you can compare the existing tree line to the proposed tree line. But it might be easier to see on TP1, just because there's less going on.
Sorry, I wasn't looking. Say again?
TP1?
Yeah.
So we're gonna take some on this.
So this is the
This
limit of
edge.
work, this dashed line is the limit of work. So like this cluster of trees, and then a little bit here, and a little bit here.
There is one piece up in the northeast corner where you've got that 50-foot setback that'll end result. But that's the limit of work, so that the sloping will be inside, and I believe the grading will be such that the panels will be below the level of the ground between there and Farm to Market Road.
Yes. Yeah, there's quite an elevation change along that edge.
Was this the site you had to go in front of Carver? You had to steal a little bit from the Carver side?
Yes.
That went okay?
Yes. Yep.
It's parcel A on that sheet, Mark. If you look at TP1, you can see it.
So, I think I heard two things, was to continue so you could do your test pit, or was to approve and try to get it done within the appeal period?
That's your option. I was just offering it as an option. I know they're anxious to get going, and there's very little to be done. The test pit certainly can be done right away, and I think Mr. King has already assented to do that. So the results should begin quickly. If you're happy with what you see, I see no problem with closing the hearing and making it subject to the receipt of that information before the expiration of the 20-day appeal period, for example. Or you could write it in, you probably should put that into the special permit, because Ken's going to have to come up with some language for the special permit. And if he gets it done between now and the next meeting, you'd probably vote on the final permit at the next meeting. Then it would get filed with the town clerk and the 20-day appeal period starts to run. So there's a fair amount of time there that we, to get the information in, and it would be taken care of.
We'd certainly appreciate that if the board's amenable to closing tonight with a direction to draft the permit for the next meeting, and we'll advance the other materials.
That sounds doable, if the board is in agreement. Yeah. So I would look for a vote to close the public hearing.
That means there's no more input after tonight from either side.
With the exception of the drainage reports?
With the exception of the drainage report, if you make that subject to your vote, then that can come in later. But other than that, there would be no further discussion. Other than the language in the special permit.
Drainage report and the resulting engineering?
Correction to the plan as needed, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing with the exception of leaving a small portion open for the results of the drainage report and any public comment on the report only.
Well,
And any engineering as a
in
result
essence,
of
you're
that
continuing the public hearing if you're saying except for.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would think that you'd close it, but subject to the receipt of the documentation within a time frame.
That's what he meant.
If that's what Mark meant, that's fine.
Second.
Okay, I'll second that.
Any discussion? This is regarding the
No.
solar. Just need some signatures. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Thank you all very much.
I should have done that sooner, sorry.
Get those guys some small solar panels so they can put them on
I was thinking that actually as I was
light
listening to
post
that.
for me. Tell them to drive down to Mass Maritime for a walk.
I'll get that.
And I left mine home
Send
today.
a message. Good night, thank you all.
Good night.
Night.
Stay if you like.
David, what are you doing here, David?
What's that?
I thought you went home.
I was gonna go home. I wanted to talk to Mark about it.
That was the plan.
Now's a good time, because now I'm tired, I don't want to talk.
Huh?
That was in the packet from the last meeting.
Oh, that was last meeting?
I don't know if it was slipped back in error.
That was,
That was that homeowners association.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They-
Yeah, this came up last meeting.
Mark, can we just signature on this too?
How are you, John?
Huh?
So how are you?
Oh, I'm fine. Glad when the warm weather stays here.
Oh, I know. 57 on Friday.
Silence makes good TV, doesn't it, Bob? Next up, we have town meeting article. Which is to amend, it's Article 12, which is to amend the
sign bylaw. First is section 1119, subsection 10, replace displayed on public or private way with displayed on private property, not state or town, county, or utility-owned property with the permission of said owner. Also add traffic signs and after light poles in the next sentence.
So this only speaks to off-premises directional signs, just to be clear?
That section, yes.
Yep. And about 2/3 of the way down, after you see 8 square feet, it says off-premises directional signs that do not restrict visibility, not larger than 6 square feet, may be displayed on a public or private way. That's the piece that they want to replace with on a privately owned property, not state or town or utility owned with permission of said owner.
So scratch on public or private way and replace with on privately owned property.
Correct. With permission of said owner.
And there's more here. It says,
Not state or town.
also add traffic signs after
And after light
poles. They may not be placed on public trees, poles, light poles, or traffic signs,
Correct.
etc.
Those are the signs that you see at every intersection that people go up with a staple gun and staple to the poles and signs and trees everywhere saying how to get to the yard sale.
So what do
Is
you do
there-
after 8?
What's that?
So the one I saw by my house is a lost cat. On the light post. Is that a problem?
The lost cat's gonna cost you $200.
That's not an off-premises directional sign, Mark. That's a lost cat sign.
It says lost pet right there, actually. Lost pet, et cetera. No kid, 18 years, I guess you gotta wait till you find the cat and then count 18 hours after that.
You're in violation of wildlife laws, feeding the coyotes. Any issues with that particular change? The next section is 1122, add such fines shall be attached to the property tax bill by the town treasurer when submitted by the Director of Inspectional Services. And just to be clear, that is after some determination is made of a violation, right?
Correct. But that's just the wording, attached to the property tax bill, so we already passed the 40U regulation at town meeting that allows that, so that's just the wording that clarifies it.
But they've had due process to that point. They're not just gonna see
Again,
this show up on their tax bill.
everyone has the right of appeal in every situation.
I'm sorry, this just doesn't, we passed what, 40B?
40U,
40U that said what?
Mass General Law, Chapter 40U, it just allows allows the town to put any town or municipal violations, it allows them to attach it to the owner's tax bill.
So it just seems so disproportional to me that, you know, you can have a guy with a yard full of junk and you write him a $300 fine for not listening to you. But somebody leaves up a directional street sign with an arrow on it and you're gonna put a lien on their taxes.
It's all municipal fines, all of them. Any town or municipal fines, Mark,
So
can
the
be
junk-
attached.
So the junk fine would fall under that as well?
All municipal fines can be attached to the property tax bill under 40U.
And it's a final method of collection, right? Rather than having to go to
It is, exactly. That's actually a very good point, George. It is. These are always a final method of collection. There's due process that we go through to get there, but this is, these instances are a worst-case scenario. These instances are when we don't get any cooperation or any compliance.
Tell to show up to court now, the court's gonna slap your hand, and we are too. You're gonna
Correct.
Paint it from all directions. But why is it important to make that explicit to the signs if it's is a general condition?
It may be a requirement of the 40U law that it's listed.
Well, do we have to list that on the other ones then, that we talked about earlier tonight?
It's under 1112. I'd have to go back and look at them all, Mark, but that's, all I can tell you is that section is relative to 40U that allows us to attach fines and penalties to the tax bill, and we've already passed 40U.
All right, this next section is confusing. It says amend section 1133 by removing 1133 completely. And then it says to add subsection 4. Well, if you just removed it, it seems like we're jumping in the middle here and not.
I see subsection 4 being added to 1135.
Correct.
Not 1133.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. I missed that bottom sentence. You lost me. So redundant with section 1119.
Yeah, I think we did that before.
Just a question, if you remove 1133 completely, do you have to renumber stuff subsequent to that as well?
I don't think so. I mean.
So you go from
I think we left.
1130, 1132 to 1134?
It's a new math.
Yeah. Too many times new math.
And freestanding sign shall have a minimum front yard setback of 5 feet. That could be an issue. We ran into that problem on Cranberry Highway where the town allowed 1 setback and the state allows 20 feet. Is there any need for any discretion there?
I'd have to look that up, but I don't think there is. I think the town is always allowed to impose a more restrictive, that's actually a less restrictive. But I mean, it's in the town right now. We don't have anything in our bylaw. So as of right now, they can go right to their property line. And we're just telling them that we want them back 5 feet.
On a freestanding sign?
Yeah.
It's not considered a structure if it's freestanding?
If we use the structure bylaw, most signs would have to be back 20 feet or 50 feet,
Right.
depending on where they are.
That was an issue that came up with what used to be Prudential Lynn sign across the street from Morse Lumber.
Well, it's
Where
an
the
issue
sign is
with
way up on the
everything on
wall.
the state highway. I think they require a 20-foot setback on the state highway.
I don't believe that's the case, George. I've been dealing with the state personally on this matter, and they're
I know there's very few that meet that requirement, but.
yeah, but I mean, they're working with us now on trying to figure out where all these new signs need to go, and they haven't mentioned that once to me, yeah.
I know they relocated the sideline of the layout in front of that building when they rebuilt the intersection for 195. But they required Prudential Lynn at that time to keep that sign 20 feet back from the new street line. But that was a local requirement.
Because they considered the sign to be a structure.
That's correct.
And that makes a lot of signs almost unusable. I mean, you're coming down Cranberry Highway and you place a
What
sign.
was applied?
No, right, right.
BB's had to pull this sign back with the restructuring of the Toby Road intersection, Toby Road. I don't know if that was,
Well, that's because they built the sidewalk there and they pushed the edge of the pavement further toward them. So they had to relocate it to get a little bit of a setback there.
so any issues with the proposed changes to Article 12? I mean, the sign bylaw.
No, Mr. Chairman, I checked my notes from our meetings, and it's pretty consistent with what we had discussed and agreed upon.
This dimensional table, we're just changing the word dimension. Brings the column header dimension, so it's reading as follows.
No, I think we're adding the maximum square feet.
Yeah.
The column stays labeled dimensions, but in the middle, there was confusion. I can't find it now, but we're adding maximum square feet.
So,
Here it is. The original states total outward surface of signs without a unit measurement. So we're adding maximum square feet. And then the bottom row of dimensions column had a confusion in terms of ground clearance. Instead of feet, it had square feet, and it's being corrected to feet because it's a linear dimension. So if what we discussed last few meetings was agreed upon, then this is consistent with it. So I make a motion that we accept I would like to make a motion if I may. Yeah, that we accept the amendment to the proposed, to the signs, to the article for signs. Which one is it?
It's Article 12.
Article 12. Thank you.
So the motion is to recommend favorable action for Article 12, is that what I heard?
Yes.
Is there a second?
There's a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. I believe that's all we have to address at this town meeting, correct? Those other, the other things on our sheet are not in the warrant. Our proposed solar bylaw did not go forward because it was thought might interfere with green communities or something? Was that the gist of it?
I think, as I recall it, Ken said that any changes to the zoning bylaw needs approval of the state that administers the green program. I don't know exactly what that means.
Well, any change would have to go to the AG for approval anyway.
Correct, but that's a separate thing, because there's funding that comes to the town under the green program or green community status, that if a zoning bylaw, the way I take it from what Ken was saying, that if you have a zoning bylaw that is in violation of what they consider to be appropriate things that the community can do, you risk losing your funding. So I don't know where that sits with respect to what the Green Communities Program says you can do and can't do, but I would think before any other zoning bylaws get looked at, you probably need to know that.
Am I to understand that our proposed changes to the bylaw for solar, ground-mounted solar facilities is not going to meetings?
That's my understanding, Emmanuel.
Nor the site plan review, right?
Correct. Only the two articles you heard tonight are on the warrant.
And that issue with the green communities came up at the last minute,
So I
so
would like to refer
I
some
don't know what it
discussion
means.
on that subject, why it got pushed aside.
But I think what started the conversation was we were using Carver as an example with their setbacks on minimum acreage. And
Yeah, and
Ken
Carver-
started to believe we were being overly restrictive, which would have been a violation.
Well, he first looked at the bylaw and essentially began incorporating it. But then as the discussion continued on, he said, you have to be careful because we're now designated as a green community and they have control over, they take a look at all zoning bylaws that you do to see that you're compliant with their regulations so that you can continue to get funding under your grant program. But that only came at the tail end of everything, so.
I still think we should have tried it, and if the state came and said, no, you can't do it, then we reconsider.
I don't have an answer for that
Yeah.
part of it, Emmanuel.
I would look for...
Ken's not here to
Public hearing?
defend himself, so we should probably have a conversation with Ken before we continue this. I mean,
Oh, sure.
I'm sure there's other matters that would have led Ken to keep it out this year or at this town meeting. I'm sure if it was in conflict with green communities and couldn't go in, that's probably the reason why he kept it out.
Can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second, Chaz. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I-
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Now we can destroy more forests for bullshit. Oops.
Anybody like to make a motion to adjourn? Oh, do you have something to take out?
Make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
You hear that?
All in favor?
Aye. Good night, Bob.
Adjourned 10:35.